After my husband gave his mother a key to our home and helped her destroy my life, I exposed their lies with the police at my doorstep. When I opened my front door, I didn't notice the strewn documents or the toppled furniture right away. It was the quietness, that oppressive, strange hush that envelops you like a veil of death and whispers that something is gravely amiss. My name is Audrey, and I recently attended a 3-day business retreat where I learned how to trust my coworkers through absurd team-building activities. Now that I'm standing in my cluttered living room, I see that I should have prioritized trusting my own family more. As I called Ryan's phone, my fingers were shaking. Voicemail's recognizable click is heard after 1 or 2 rings. Naturally, my beloved husband was most likely at his mother's place, acting as though he had no idea why his wife had called. "Ryan, someone broke into the house. The safe is open, call me back immediately." I cataloged the damage as I wandered through the wreckage of my home. The couch cushions were cut open, drawers were pulled out and emptied, and picture frames were placed face down. However, they hadn't been searching for cash or valuables. This was personal, no. My grandmother's letters, the only remnants of her that I still possessed, were the first thing they targeted. It buzzed on my phone. Not Ryan. Evan at work. He inquired, "How's the drive back?" "Someone broke into my house," I said, shaking my voice. "The safe. They knew the combination." "Jesus, are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" I tossed away a ripped magazine and said, "No. I know exactly who did this. Helen's fingerprints are all over this mess. She's been trying to get those letters for months." "Your mother-in-law? Why would she?" I arrived at the kitchen, where all the cabinets were empty, and said, "Because she can't stand that Ryan married someone who won't bow to her every whim. She thinks those letters prove my grandmother's family wronged hers decades ago, some ancient real estate dispute she won't let die." When Evan said, "Call the police." "And tell them what?" "That my mother-in-law used a key my husband probably gave her to steal family documents. That my sister-in-law probably helped because she's bitter about her divorce and wants to hurt someone else's marriage." Though it sounded empty, I chuckled. "They're too smart for that. They'll say Ryan gave them permission. It'll be my word against the entire Miller family." The door to the basement was ajar. I had not yet looked down there. "I have to go, Evan. I need to see what else they took." "Audrey, wait." After hanging up, I went down the stairs. My feet creaked with every stride. More mayhem was shown when the basement light flicked on. However, I noticed a tiny piece of paper stuck behind a toppled box. I managed to liberate it. It was a 3-day-old receipt for a duplicate key from the hardware store. Once more, my phone buzzed. "Ryan." Before I could say anything, he inquired, "Where are you?" "At Mom's," it was his words. "Listen, Audrey, I can explain." "Did you give her a key?" "Quiet." "Afterwards. She just wanted to look for some old family photos while you were away. I didn't think." "You never do think when it comes to her, do you?" I clenched my fist around the receipt. Those letters were all I had left of my grandmother, Ryan. The only things that were truly mine. "We can talk about this when I get home." "No." The word was piercing enough to pierce. "We'll talk about this in front of everyone. I'm coming over there right now. And Ryan, tell your mother to prepare for war." After hanging up, I stood in my basement, surrounded by the ruins of faith. Like everyone else in their lives, they believed they could break me and force me to submit to their authority. However, they were unaware of what they had just begun. Sometimes the opponent who knows how to hit back harder is more dangerous than the one who hits first. My skin crawled when I saw Helen's immaculate living room. While my house was in ruins across town, everything else was in its proper place, not even a cushion out of place. Helen's interpretation of reality was depicted through the carefully chosen family images on her walls, which conveyed the story of Ryan and Chloe's early years. There aren't any photos of my wedding day in them. Helen poured tea into exquisite cups, her voice dripping with honeyed, delicious poison. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "Ryan gave me permission to look for old family albums while you were away, nothing more." With her arms folded and her wedding ring noticeably missing, Chloe sat next to her mother. "You're being hysterical, Audrey, as usual." I put the receipt from the hardware store on the coffee table. "Funny how you needed a new key made 3 days ago. Planning ahead?" Eyes flitting between his mother and myself, Ryan shifted in his seat and said, "Maybe we should all calm down." "Oh, we're very calm," I remarked as I observed Helen's immaculately manicured fingers encircling her teacup. "Just like we were calm last Christmas when you went through my phone while I was sleeping. Or last month, when you showed up unannounced at my office to check on me. When Helen said, 'I worry about my son. Someone needs to look out for his interests.' His interests? I laughed till my throat ached from the broken glass. Or yours? Mother was right about you from the start. Chloe's eyes shone as she leaned forward. You never understood our family, always keeping secrets, hiding things in that safe of yours. Those letters belong to my grandmother. Letters that prove your family cheated ours 60 years ago. Helen's mask broke. That property should have been ours. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing when she, Ryan warned, but it was too late. Slowly, the pieces clicked into place as I stood up. So you admit you took them? Helen's face suddenly became smoother. I admitted nothing. And you have no proof. With my hand hovering over the record button, I took out my phone and said, You're right. But I will. Ryan, are you coming home or staying here? He glanced at his mother, then at me, constantly conflicted, always taking the easy route. I think maybe we all need space to cool off. I paused to glance back at Helen before making my way to the door, saying, Wrong answer. You know what's funny? Those letters you stole? They're not even the originals. Just copies I kept as decoys. Grandmother taught me well. Always keep what matters most where manipulative people can't reach it. The clatter of Helen's teacup against its saucer was heard. You're lying. I asked. Am I? Guess you'll have to wonder about that, along with what else I might have hidden away. I looked into Ryan's eyes. Don't bother coming home tonight, or maybe ever. He started to get up but Chloe grabbed his arm and said, Audrey, wait. She urged. Let her go. She's just trying to manipulate you, like always. I left Helen's well-organized world behind and made my way to my car. I held the steering wheel with trembling hands, but not because of terror. As I had previously stated, the originals were secure because they had been kept in a safety deposit box ever since I married Ryan and seen Helen's hunger when Grandma's letters were brought up during the wedding. It buzzed on my phone. Evan once more. He inquired, how bad was it? They fell for the ruse. Helen essentially admitted it. I started the engine, but I have another task for you. Remember that security system you installed at your lake house? The one with the hidden cameras? Yeah, why? Because I'm done playing defense. They want to go through my things. Let's make sure we catch them in the act next time. As I backed away, I noticed Helen's house become smaller in my rear-view mirror. And Evan, thank you for being the one person in my life who actually listens. Always. But Audrey, just be careful. People like that, they're most dangerous when they're cornered. With plans already racing through my head, I hung up the phone. Helen believed she knew everything there was to know about me. She understood me well. She had overlooked one important fact, though. I had observed her influence everyone for 3 years. It was time to apply the principles I had acquired from the greatest. Although it wasn't my typical location, the coffee shop across from Helen's preferred hairdresser offered me the ideal view. After 2 hours of observing, Evan moved into the seat across from me and pushed a brand new cup in my direction. His words, the cameras are set up. Motion sensors, night vision, everything feeding directly to your phone. But are you sure about this? I gestured to the window of the salon where Helen and Chloe were sitting, receiving their weekly manicures. I hit the play button on my phone and said, Listen. During our confrontation, the bug I had placed in Helen's handbag allowed me to hear their voices well. Helen was stating, We need those original letters. That safety deposit box has to be at her bank downtown. Ryan says she's been going through their financial records, said Chloe. Probably planning to divorce him and take everything. She yelled, Over my dead body, Helen. I didn't spend 30 years building this family's reputation to have her destroy it. We're going back to the house tomorrow while she's at work. There has to be something we can use against her. I put an end to the recording. Still think I'm paranoid? Evan's expression stiffened. We should take this to the police and tell them? I put my hands around the steaming cup and said, And tell them what? That my mother-in-law is planning to rob me? They'll say it's a family matter. Besides, I want more than just stopping them. I want them to face consequences for once in their privileged lives. It buzzed on my phone. Ryan. I'm calling once more. For the 3rd time today. I turned it down. He's been sleeping at their house, I said. Probably plotting with them, trying to figure out where the originals are. Or maybe he's worried about you. My coffee tasted unpleasant, so I said, Then he should have worried before giving them a key to our house. Before choosing them over me again. Ryan texted. Come home, please. We must speak. Home, I whispered. Like that means anything anymore? Evan bent over. Audrey, I know you're hurt, but The entrance of the salon chimed. Helen and Chloe came out with shiny new manicures. Helen stopped and stared straight into the coffee shop window as they made their way to her Mercedes. I remained motionless, unable to breathe. Her mouth formed the sly smirk I had come to despise. She was aware that I was observing. I said, "Time to go," and suddenly stood up. "They'll be at my house tomorrow at 10 o'clock, according to their usual schedule. That's when we'll catch them." Evan's eyebrows went up. "I thought you wanted to handle this yourself." "I did. I do." I collected my belongings, my hands trembling a little. "I can't face them alone anymore. I need someone in my corner. Always." He lightly touched my arm. "Just promise me something. Don't let revenge consume you. I've seen what it does to people." As I watched Helen's car drive away, I thought back to our wedding reception, when she had cornered me in the restroom and first revealed her true nature. "You'll never be good enough for this family," she'd stated. "One day, Ryan will realize that." I informed Evan, "This isn't about retaliation. It's about justice. And maybe saving Ryan from them, even if he doesn't want to be saved." Once more, my phone buzzed. A message from an unidentified number. When I opened it, my blood froze. "Found something interesting in your grandmother's old law firm records. Tomorrow noon, Riverside Park. Come alone, or Ryan learns everything about the Anderson case." Evan saw my face. "What's wrong?" With my thoughts racing, I closed the message. My grandmother's greatest regret, the secret she carried to her grave, and the true cause of Helen's animosity toward our family was the Anderson case. "Nothing," I pretended to smile. "Just work stuff. I should go prepare for tomorrow." But Helen's comments from 3 years ago kept repeating in my mind as I made my way to my car. "Ryan will understand it one day." Perhaps she was correct. Perhaps he would tomorrow. Perhaps it was time for him to do so. At lunchtime, Riverside Park appeared different, somehow cooler. Holding a manila envelope containing ammunition for whatever game Helen was playing, I sat on a bench. The case files of Anderson. Decades ago, my grandma had sealed them away. In my hands now, they were a weapon. A shadow landed on my lap. Not Helen. Ryan. "My mother told me everything," he claimed. He sat next to me, keeping a safe distance from me. "About the Anderson case. About what your grandmother did to our family." It felt like a heavier envelope. "Did she tell you how your grandfather tried to blackmail mine? How he threatened to destroy their law firm unless they gave him that property?" "That's not," he paused, face rubbing. "She said you'd try to twist things, like she twisted you." I looked over at him. "When did you give her the safe combination, Ryan?" His silence was sufficient response. I went on. "The day after our wedding. When she convinced you I was hiding something. That's why you've been checking our bank statements, right? Looking for evidence I'm stealing from you." "I was protecting our family." "Our family?" I laughed, but my voice didn't sound like it. "There is no our family. There's only ever been yours." It buzzed on my phone. Regarding the cameras he had set, Evan was messaging. Everything was prepared for the trap of tomorrow. All of a sudden, though, it felt empty. "She's using you," I whispered. "She always has. And you let her, because it's easier than standing up to her." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I dropped the envelope on his lap and stood up. "Here. The precious Anderson case files. Proof that your grandfather was the one who committed fraud, not mine. Proof that your mother's been lying all these years." He gazed intently at the envelope. "How did you get them?" "From my grandmother's old partner. Turns out, he's been waiting years for someone to finally expose the truth." I took a step back. "But you know what? Keep them. Burn them. Give them to Helen. I don't care anymore." "Audrey, wait. I filed for divorce yesterday." The words hung like broken glass between us. Ryan's face turned white. "You what?" "Check your email. The papers should arrive today." Now my hands were steady. "I'm done being the villain in Helen's story. Done watching you choose them over me. Done pretending we have a marriage worth saving." He approached me as he rose up and said, "We can fix this. I'll talk to Mother." "That's exactly the problem," I said, stepping back from his contact. "Your first instinct is still to run to her. It always will be." Once more my phone buzzed. This time, "Helen. Where are you? We had a deal." I returned the type. "The deal has changed. Inquire about the files with Ryan." "You can't just throw away 3 years of marriage," Ryan stated. I started to go, but stopped when I heard, "You already did that when you gave them the key to our house." You know what the saddest part is? I actually thought I could save you from them. But you don't want to be saved. Audrey. Goodbye, Ryan. I passed the seat where we used to have Sunday lunches and the location where he had proposed as I strolled through the park. Helen, Ryan, and even Chloe were all buzzing on my phone. I made them all quiet. Only Evan's message was received. The cameras are in real time. Do you still intend to carry out tomorrow's plan? At the park's exit, I paused and took one final glance back. Ryan appeared disoriented as he stood where I had left him, holding the package tightly. My determination faltered for a second. Then I recalled the broken safe, the broken house, and the 3 years of gaslighting and deceptive tactics. Yes, I did reply to the text. However, plans changed. I no longer only wished to catch them in the act. What are you looking for? I observed as Ryan, who was constantly rushing back to Mother, took out his phone and most likely called Helen. I typed, I want to destroy them, each and every one. Because sometimes destroying everything and starting anew is the only way to save yourself. I was sitting in my car across the street when the security camera feed flashed on my laptop screen. Helen's typical Thursday morning interruption is 10 minutes away. Every aspect of my property, including the front and back doors as well as the garden walk Helen loved to criticize, was caught by Evan's intricate setup. From the passenger seat, Evan said, "You don't have to watch this. We can just let the cameras record." My coffee cup made my fingers whiten. I need to see it. Need to know exactly how they do it. Helen's Mercedes smoothly came to a stop in front of my house on time. Chloe followed her out, as always immaculately styled. Then a third door opened, and Ryan appeared. In my hands, the coffee cup crumbled. He is assisting them. They went to the main door. Ryan looked over his shoulder anxiously. Helen gestured angrily as she spoke. He produced his original key, not the duplicate. Jesus, whispered Evan. Audrey, maybe we should wait. As a fourth figure stepped out of Helen's car, I took hold of his arm. Who is that? With a briefcase in hand, the man in the pricey suit walked with authority. Somehow, he looked familiar. That's James Morton, Evan announced. Helen's lawyer. I've seen him at charity events. The group vanished within my home. I flipped between camera angles, seeing them navigate places with unsettling resemblance. Helen led them as a general would lead soldiers. She said, "The study," clearly audible over the covert microphones. "Those Anderson files have to be here somewhere." Mother, added her. She said she gave them to me. Ryan made a feeble protest. Copies, obviously. Helen yelled, "You think your wife would give up her only leverage? Search everything." Once more I saw them tearing up my house. However, things were different this time. This time, I noticed that Ryan was opening drawers with trembling hands. As Chloe knocked books from the shelves, I noticed her smug smile. I witnessed Helen's disguise come off when she believed no one was looking, exposing her true desperation. Morton said, "Behind the safe," without warning. "Did you check behind it?" I gasped. The safe on the wall had been a ruse. There was nothing back there, but everyone was aware of it. Too soon, Ryan answered. "No, there's nothing back there." Helen squinted her eyes. "Move it, Mother, move it." My fingers hovered above 911 as I reached for my phone. The prior owner had installed a secret compartment behind that safe. There were documents within that showed Helen's own financial misdeeds, which were considerably more devastating than the Anderson case. Compiled with care over 3 years of observation and anticipation. Ryan took a step forward, then halted. "No," he replied. Helen turned against him asking, "What did you say?" "I said no," he said more firmly. "This ends now. We're leaving." Helen's composure broke when she asked, "After everything I've done for you?" "That woman has poisoned you against your own family," Ryan remarked. "That woman is my wife." "Not anymore," Morton cut in with ease. "The divorce papers were filed yesterday. You have no legal right to—" With my phone filming everything, I walked into the doorway and asked, "To prevent us from?" "Breaking and entering, destruction of property, conspiracy." With the exception of Helen, they all froze like guilty kids. She flashed her sly smile. "Perfect timing, dear, we were just discussing the Anderson case and other family matters." I walked deeper into the room with Evan right behind me and said, "I can see that. But you made one mistake, Helen. You got sloppy. Desperate." She responded, "I don't know what you mean," as her voice became more strained. "The Anderson case was never about property fraud, was it? It was about covering up what really happened." "What you did?" Her smile faltered. "You're confused." Adding, The real documents aren't behind that safe. I looked into Ryan's astonished eyes and said, they're already with the district attorney. Along with proof that your mother embezzled millions from her own charity foundation. That's why she's so desperate to find evidence against my family, to protect herself. Chaos ensued in the room. Ryan stood motionless between them all as Helen reached for her lawyer and Chloe began to scream. However, I continued to watch Helen as her idyllic environment fell apart. Retaliation isn't always about ruining someone. Allowing them to ruin themselves is sometimes the solution. And sometimes speaking the truth is enough to bring about justice. My living area was painted in alternating shades of blue and red by the police lights. As she talked to the authorities, Helen sat primly on the couch, tears running down her flawlessly applied face. She pointed to me and wept. She's the one who's been hurting our family. I was just trying to protect my son. We have evidence of her harassment, Morton said with ease. Her obsession with destroying her mother-in-law's reputation. The break-in was merely an attempt to recover documents that rightfully belonged to the family. The recording of their entrance was no longer useful, and my phone felt heavy in my pocket. Like Helen always did, they had gone ahead of me and completely changed the situation. That isn't true, Ryan exclaimed abruptly. Everybody looked at him. Mother, stop, just stop. Helen's weeping stopped at once. Ryan, dear, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. He moved away from her and in my direction, but I retreated. Too late, too little. The embezzlement accusations, they're true, aren't they? Asked Ryan. That's why you've been so desperate to destroy Audrey's family's reputation, to cover your tracks. Everything I did was for this family, Helen stated. Her mask fell off entirely. She pointed a finger at me and threatened to destroy everything. That money secured your future, your sister's future, she said. The officers looked at each other. He heard someone talking into his radio. Mrs. Helen Miller, we're going to need you to come down to the station. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here, she said to Morton, her attorney. Do something. Morton, meanwhile, was already moving in the direction of the entrance. I think our professional relationship has concluded, Helen, given the circumstances. After that, everything occurred pretty fast. As they led her away, Helen wailed and Chloe followed, complaining about loyalty to her family. The evidence I had acquired was being gathered, recorded, and labeled when Morton escaped during the confusion. Audrey, said Ryan. Don't, I said, putting my arms over myself as I felt icy. Just don't. I didn't know about the charity money, about any of it, I swear. I said, but you knew about the break-ins, the harassment, the lies, and my voice broke. You chose them. Every single time, you chose them. I can fix this? I pointed at our demolished house and said. Fix what? My grandmother's letters are still gone. Our marriage is over. Your mother's going to jail. What exactly can you fix? There was Evan in the doorway. Audrey, the detective needs your statement. Ryan grabbed me by the arm as I tried to pursue him. I love you, he shouted frantically. Isn't that worth something? I remembered every touch, every promise, and every instance when I felt like we were actually creating something as I gazed at his hand on my arm. Then I recalled the last time I saw him pick his mother's falsehoods above my reality, helping them break into our house. I whispered, love without trust isn't love. It's just another form of control. He was standing in the ruins of our life together as I withdrew. The detective waited while filling out more paperwork and asking additional questions. I spent hours describing how I had discovered proof of Helen's embezzlement, how I had recorded her harassment, and how I had seen my marriage gradually deteriorate due to deceit and manipulation. Later, when I was by myself in my car, I took out my grandmother's final letter, not the one Helen had taken, but the authentic one. The one I'd held dear for years. Remember, dear heart, she'd wrote. Sometimes winning means walking away. Sometimes the greatest victory is in refusing to play their game at all. Ryan again buzzed on my phone. I turned off the phone and turned on the engine. He was standing in the doorway of what had been our house, looking lost, and I could see him in the rear-view mirror. My heart grieved for a second, but as I drove away, I came to a realization. I had nearly turned into Helen in my attempt to destroy her. Manipulative, control-obsessed, and prepared to give anything up for success. My grandma had been correct. Taking down Helen wasn't the true victory, it was in releasing myself at last. The corridor of the courthouse was cold and long. While waiting for Helen's arraignment, I watched from a rough wooden seat while her society pals whispered to one another. They were still in shock that the president of their charitable board was being charged with embezzlement 3 weeks after the break-in. With black circles under his eyes, Ryan emerged at the end of the hallway. With her eyes like daggers, Chloe held onto his arm. I pretended to read emails while concentrating on my phone. His voice was closer than I thought. Audrey. Can we talk? I stated, the divorce papers are with your lawyer, without raising my gaze. Just sign them. He sat next to me, too near, and said, that's not. Mother wants to make a deal now. I gave him a look. A deal? If you drop the charges, she'll return all of your grandmother's letters. Bitter than coffee grinds, a giggle erupted. You don't understand, do you? All that matters is that she is still my mother, isn't that right? She made mistakes despite everything she did and everything she stole, so I stood, seeking space. Errors? She terrorized me in my own home, stole millions from her own charity, and methodically destroyed our marriage, I said, turning heads. Ryan, those aren't errors. They are options. Ryan was beckoned by Helen's smile, but before he could react, the doors of the courthouse sprang open, and Evan hurried in with a manila packet in his hand. Breathing heavily, he replied, I found it in Morton's office. With shaky fingers, I opened the envelope to reveal a single document, a letter from Helen to her lawyer dated 3 years prior to my wedding. What is that? Did Ryan ask? I looked through the contents and remarked, insurance. Just in case I ever threatened to take control of you. Helen had orchestrated this whole thing from the start, the harassment, the break-ins, everything, to make me appear crazy and fixated on the Anderson case, so I looked up as she came in handcuffed and accompanied by officers. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in Helen's eyes as they fixed themselves on the letter. Where did that come from? She insisted. I held up the letter and said, Helen, you documented everything. Your lawyer isn't as loyal as you thought. Every stage of your scheme to ruin me. Everyone will now be fully aware of your identity. She rushed forward, but the officers stopped her. You ungrateful little, she said. Stop, Mom, Ryan positioned himself between us and said. Stop. Everything I did was for you, to protect you from her. Helen said, her face crushed. From where? Ryan's voice broke. From emotion? From a life that is beyond your control? She never loved you like I do. Helen said, her eyes hardening. No, I cut him off. I loved him enough to let him make his own decisions. You loved him enough to make sure he never could. The murmurs surrounding us became more intense. Chloe turned away from her mother, finally realizing the truth she had helped facilitate, and Helen's friends stared in horror as their ideal society matron broke before their own eyes. Evan whispered, the arraignment's starting. The district attorney had been quietly waiting nearby, so I gave him the letter before turning to Ryan one more time. I did love you, I replied. But love shouldn't hurt like this. Audrey, please. Goodbye, Ryan. As Helen was escorted into the courtroom, I turned to leave, her well-planned world crumbling in my wake. My grandmother's former legal partner texted me, saying, I found something in the archives. Your grandmother would be proud. My phone rang. The autumn air outside was crisp and clean, and Evan caught up to me at the bottom of the steps leading to the courthouse. You all right? He inquired. As the wind pulled the leaves away from their limbs, I saw them strewn all over the sidewalk. Sincerely, I replied, no, but I will be. Because sometimes defeating your adversaries isn't the only way to win. Refusing to allow them to ruin you is sometimes the key. And sometimes the best form of retaliation is just to walk away with your head held high, and let them deal with the fallout from their own decisions. In contrast to the suburban gloom I had left behind, the lights of downtown glittered through the window as the final box from my previous life stood unopened on the floor of my new apartment. Helen's carefully constructed reputation was shattered like a dropped teacup, and the society pages were already humming with scandal when Evan texted me about her sentencing, 5 years for embezzlement. Ryan was standing in the hallway with a familiar leather-bound bundle, and I froze when I heard a knock at the door. I recognized the pattern. 3 rapid taps, 1 slow. I said, grandmother's letters, with a constricted throat. He held them out as a peace gift and explained, I found them in Mother's study while cleaning out the house. They were always yours. I took the bundle and traced the tattered edges with my fingers. How is she? He shrugged, saying, angry, bitter. She's in therapy. She claims to be beginning to comprehend certain aspects of our family. Along with you. Gaining the ability to stand alone. A painting and easel stood by the window, the canvas half covered in bold strokes of red and gold, something I'd discovered by mistake, a means to pour forth all words couldn't describe. He looked beyond me into the flat. Simply, it helps, I said. Audrey, I don't. As I moved away I said, We both know why it ended. I understand. You should see, he said, bringing out an envelope containing the signed divorce papers and other items. It contained a 30-year-old newspaper clipping about a young Helen Miller who was frantically attempting to establish her social standing before marrying into a wealthy family. Ryan remarked softly. She was constantly terrified of losing control, of being shown to be inadequate. I now understand what she did, but I'm not condoning it. Understanding doesn't make it right. No, but it helps me not become her. Somewhere in the metropolis below, a siren screamed. Where I used to cringe at the sound, now it served as a reminder that life moves on, changes, and evolves. I told myself, I never wanted revenge, in shock at the reality. I just wanted to be free. I understand. You won because of that. He started to walk away but stopped. The picture. It's stunning. I opened the bundle of letters after he departed, and while my grandmother's words flowed across the pages, describing her strength, her courage to confront bullies, and her courage to choose integrity over retaliation, one piece, written shortly before her death, struck my attention. Because they are afraid of their own darkness, some people will attempt to dull your light, dear heart. You have more power if you keep shining than if you resist them. Not every story needed a tidy ending, and sometimes victory wasn't in killing or even forgiving your enemies, but rather in finding who you truly were without them. I grabbed up my brush and added blue touches to the canvas. My phone buzzed once more, and Evan was inviting me to dinner. No date yet, but perhaps someday. For the time being, friendship was sufficient, and I had my freedom, my truth, and my work. In my previous life, I would have perceived danger in the shadows created by the flickering city lights, but now I see opportunities, patterns, and untold stories. The canvas was waiting, the night was young, and I picked up another brush. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely free, not because Helen had lost, not because I had won, but because I had finally understood the difference between emancipation and retribution. And I discovered who I was in that disparity. My parents gave my sister a brand new car for Christmas, leaving me with nothing. Until a winning lottery ticket changed everything. The peacefulness of Christmas morning was broken by the sound of laughter and delighted squeals coming up from our driveway. With my coffee mug warming my hands, I stood at the kitchen window and watched my younger sister Tessa hop up and down next to a brand new red Volkswagen Beetle that had a huge silver ribbon on top. With joy on their cheeks, my parents smiled as they gave her the keys. I'm Ella, and I recognized at this point that I would always be the underdog in my family's history. Through the glass, Tessa's voice could be heard. Oh my God. I can't believe you guys did this. As if it were made of gold, she was already seated in the driver's seat and rubbing her hands over the steering wheel. I looked at my small Christmas presents to everyone, the pile of scratch-off lottery tickets on the counter. They had yet to bother opening them. After investing every available dollar in my culinary school applications, the tickets were the only thing I could afford. However, it would have been useless to try to explain that to my family. They had been rather explicit about what they thought of my pastime. I was shocked to hear my mother say, "Lay?" She was still wearing her coat when she stood in the doorway. "Why aren't you outside with everyone? Come see your sister's car." I made an effort to grin. "Just finishing my coffee, Mom?" With that typical expression of despair, she scowled. "You could try being happy for her, you know. This is a big moment." Before I could stop them, they blurted out, "Right. Because I'm the one who makes everything about myself." When she said, "Don't start. Not today," I watched her go back outside, biting my tongue. My father was demonstrating how Tessa should adjust her mirrors through the window. He was grinning proudly, which is something I never managed to achieve, not when I made the honor roll, when I won the regional cooking competition, or even when I was accepted to culinary school before they refused to cover my tuition. I found myself reaching for the lotto tickets. I began scratching out the numbers on one out of habit, not really noticing until I noticed 3 matched digits. I double-checked the winning combinations, and my heart began beating. $50,000. With trembling palms, I gazed at the ticket. I could pay for culinary school with this money. I could begin constructing the restaurant of my dreams. At last, I could demonstrate to everyone the value of my pastime. However, this ticket was intended to be a present. Giving cash to them and seeing them celebrate another lucky break would be the appropriate thing to do. Cash would likely go into Tessa's education fund or a family vacation that I wouldn't be invited to. My folks chuckled as Tessa playfully honked the horn outside. They hadn't even realized I wasn't there. That's when I decided what to do. I folded the winning ticket carefully and put it in my pocket. I collected the remaining scratch-offs and disposed of them in the recycle bin. What they hadn't bothered to open, they wouldn't miss. La, A voice shouted from outside my father's house. "Get out here and take a family picture." As I approached the front door, I stopped and placed my hand on the handle. They were huddled around the automobile, their breath evident in the chilly December air, as I could see through the window. Without me, they appeared to be the ideal family of three. "Coming," I returned the call. But I went upstairs to my room instead of joining them. Within an hour, I had the winning ticket in my wallet and a laptop open to apartment listings. Sometimes the finest form of retaliation is to leave rather than to get even. And I eventually had my chance because of their forgotten Christmas present. When I unlocked the door to my new flat, the key felt heavy in my hand. A studio above a downtown Thai restaurant wasn't much, but it was mine. My stomach rumbled in spite of everything as the scent of garlic and lemongrass rose through the floorboards. My phone was still blazing with missed calls from home 3 weeks after Christmas. My mother continued to text me, each one more filled with guilt than the last, even after I had left a letter stating that I needed space. "You're being selfish, Lila. Your sister needs you right now." After setting my duffel bag on the exposed mattress in the corner, I began unpacking the few culinary supplies I had packed, including a well-seasoned cast-iron pan, my knife roll, and the necessities. The winning lottery ticket, the funds already set aside for tuition at the culinary school, and the security deposit for this apartment were all securely deposited. I froze when I heard a knock on my door. Had they discovered me somehow? "Hello, new tenant?" It was a strange, highly accented voice. "I'm Marco, from downstairs." A tall man in chef's whites with his salt and pepper hair pulled back in a short ponytail was waiting for me as I opened the door. His blazer bore the moniker Executive Chef. He pointed to my boxes and remarked, "I noticed someone moving in. Wanted to introduce myself. We try to keep a family atmosphere here." I winced when I heard the word family, but his kind grin calmed me. He noticed the knife roll that was visible through my open door. "You cook?" he inquired as he followed my eyes. "I try to. I'm actually starting culinary school next month." His eyes glowed. "No kidding. We're short-staffed downstairs. Could use someone who knows their way around a kitchen, even part-time." My phone buzzed once more before I could reply. The name of my father appeared on the screen. Marco noticed my face and said, "Complicated situation? You could say that." He gave a contemplative nod. "Listen, come down tomorrow morning if you're interested. Sometimes the best therapy is keeping your hands busy and your knives sharp." I eventually listened to my father's voicemail after he departed. He spoke in a rough, irate tone. "Your mother's upset, and Tessa's grades are slipping. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Time to grow up and come home." After deleting the message, I launched my laptop and navigated to the website of the cooking school. Tuition for the first term was due the following week. I had my finger hovering over the submit payment button when Tessa sent me another text. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Where are you? I'm worried." Compared to the others, this one hurt more. Even if Tessa and I didn't get along, she wasn't to blame for our parents' actions. But she had never been able to hide anything from our parents, so I couldn't risk giving her the truth. "I'm safe," I replied by typing. "Just need some time." I was in Marco's kitchen the following morning, slicing vegetables with more attention to detail than was necessary. The motion felt familiar and calming. Marco worked next to me, sometimes giving me technique advice. He remarked, "You have good instincts," as he observed me adjusting the heat beneath a boiling sauce. "But you're angry? It shows in your cooking. Is that a bad thing?" He gave a shrug. "Depends what you do with it. Anger can fuel passion or destroy it. The difference is in the control." My mother texted me again, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. I choose to disregard it. Marco went on, trying the sauce with a spoon. "The people who hurt us don't suffer when we let them consume our thoughts. They have no idea. We are the only ones that suffer." I reflected on my silent exit and the lottery ticket. They must occasionally realize that they cannot take people for granted. He gave me the spoon and said, "Maybe, but be careful that your desire for vengeance doesn't become your motivation. Try this. What is absent?" Thinking, I took a taste of the sauce. "Salt, and perhaps a little acid." He grinned. "Exactly. In both life and cookery, balance is crucial." A server burst through the entrance of the kitchen. "Chef, a woman is outside inquiring about Ella, claims to be her mother." My heart stopped beating. I could see her looking around the dining room through the kitchen window, Tessa following her like a shadow. Marco gave me a curious glance. Silently, he said, "Back door through the alley. But keep in mind that you can't run indefinitely. You must eventually take a firm stance and serve the food you have cooked." I tied my apron as I nodded. The true test was deciding when to stay and fight, not when to flee. After 3 months of culinary school, I felt like I was finally settling in. I seldom had time to think about my family because of my early classes, afternoon jobs at Marco's restaurant, and late evenings designing my own future kitchen. That should have been my first clue that things were going to blow up in my face. As I was getting ready for dinner service, Amelia entered Marco's kitchen. Now a rising star chef at one of the city's best restaurants, my old friend from high school culinary club looked just like I remembered her. Pristine chef's whites, neatly combed hair, and that grin that never quite reached her eyes. She leaned on the prep table and muttered, "Lila Hawkins? I couldn't believe it, but I had heard reports that you were employed here. By now, shouldn't you be managing your own business?" "I'm still learning," I said, continuing to cut vegetables in the steady pattern Marco had shown me. Not all of us were supported by our parents while attending Le Cordon Bleu. "Talking about parents," she added, taking out her phone and browsing through some content. "Last week, I met your mother at the charity dinner. She appeared concerned about you." My finger almost got caught as my knife slipped. "You spoke with my mom? She made a comment about you stealing money and fleeing. Theatrical, even for you." Suddenly, the kitchen felt too small and too hot. "That wasn't the case." "No." Her eyebrows went up. "I know you've been looking at restaurant business plans since I also heard from several investors. Considering that, the timing is intriguing." Now my hands trembled. "Amelia, what do you want?" "Want? All I'm worried about is my old acquaintance. You know, it takes more than simply money to open a business. It requires reputation, relationships, and stability." She underlined the final point. "It would be unfortunate if prospective investors were aware of rumors regarding the true source of your startup funding." Marco's voice exploded from the doorway before I could reply. "Is everything in here all right?" Amelia's smile became incredibly sweet. "Just catching up with a friend from long ago. Chef Marco, I actually came to discuss business. Next month, my restaurant will host a pop-up event with up-and-coming talented artists. Lay's participation would be greatly appreciated." Marco glanced at me, but I was unable to look him in the eye. Decisively, "I'll let her think about it," he stated. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have service to prepare for." I tried to stabilize myself by holding onto the side of the prep table when Amelia left. I muttered, "She's going to tell everyone." "The investors, my family." Under his breath, Marco said, "Tell them what?" I told him everything, including the lottery ticket, my escape, and the meticulously planned plans that were now in danger of failing. He gave me a towel to wipe my hands after listening to me without passing judgment. His words were, "So now you have a choice. You can run again, or you can face this head on." "How?" "She'll destroy everything I've worked for." He took my knife and tested its sharpness, asking, "Will she? Or will she just expose what you've been afraid to face?" Sometimes our biggest fears are just shadows, Ella. They disappear when we shine a light on them. A text message from an unidentified number rang on my phone. It was a screen grab of an email sent to possible investors, most likely by Amelia. It went into detail regarding my family problems and money irregularities. "The pop-up event," Marco said, "could be an opportunity. Show everyone, Amelia, your family, these investors, exactly who you are and what you can do. Or it could be a trap." He grinned. "Most likely both. But you're not that scared girl from Christmas morning anymore. You've learned more than just cooking techniques in my kitchen." I reflected on the previous 3 months, including the cuts, burns, and late hours spent honing recipes. With every minor triumph, I developed something beyond my culinary abilities. "What's that saying you always use?" I responded. "The hottest fires make the strongest steel." He gave a nod. "And you, my dear, are about to walk through fire." I grabbed up my knife and started chopping again, making deliberate, accurate cuts. Amelia believed she could exploit my past to ruin my future, but she had overlooked the most crucial culinary rule. Time is everything. "Tell her I'm in," I responded, "for the pop-up event. But I'm doing it my way." Marco grinned knowingly. Now that sounds like a chef talking. At 3 in the morning, Tessa sent the following text. "Can you meet me? Please don't tell Mom and Dad." Her eyes were red and swollen when I spotted her seated in her Volkswagen Beetle outside Marco's restaurant. Her normally flawless hair was pulled back in an untidy ponytail, and she had lost weight since Christmas. She replied, "I failed 2 classes, as I got into the passenger seat. And I can't tell them? They think I'm applying to pre-med programs, but I haven't even started the applications." The quiet between us was filled by the gentle hum of the heater. This vehicle had represented every issue with our family's dynamic. It was like a confession booth now. Even though I already knew the answer, I questioned, why pre-med? My personal nightmare. Mom's backup plan, Dad's dream. She laughed, but her voice sounded more like a sob. How do you do it, Lai? Just walk away from their expectations? I reflected about Amelia's threats, the lottery ticket concealed in my apartment, and all the lies entangled in my purported bravery. I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask about making good choices right now. At least you made a choice. She reached into her jacket and took out a crumpled piece of paper. I found this in Mom's study. It was a list. My movements were monitored. Notes of folks she'd spoken to in town. Tessa stated, she is aware of the culinary school. I felt sick to my stomach. Does she know about the money? Not yet, but she's obsessed with figuring out how you're paying for everything, she said. She thinks you're involved in something illegal. Dad's talking about hiring a private investigator. I didn't miss the irony. I had given them even more justification to meddle in my affairs by attempting to break free from their authority. There's more. Go on, Tessa. I overheard Mom talking to Amelia Stone's mother at the country club. They're planning something for that pop-up event, some kind of intervention or confrontation. They want to save you from yourself or whatever. I balled my hands into fists. Amelia would involve our mothers, of course. She was an expert at twisting the knife. Whispering, you should tell them the truth, Tessa whispered. About everything. Like you're telling them the truth about pre-med? She winced, and I instantly felt bad about what I had said. Both of us were imprisoned in distinct iterations of the same cage. Maybe, Tessa said hesitantly. Maybe we could help each other. I could come to your pop-up event, run interference with Mom, and you could help me figure out how to tell them about changing my major. To what? Photography, she confessed, displaying a collection of gorgeous culinary photographs on her phone. I've been practicing at restaurants around town. That's actually how I found out where you were working. The photographs were stunning, capturing the soul of each dish through the play of light and shadow. Their strict, meticulous approach to everything was quite different from our mother's. These are incredible, Tess. Really? Because sometimes I think I'm just being stupid and selfish, throwing away a real career for something you love, I said at the conclusion. Yeah, I know that feeling. We were swept by the headlights of a passing automobile. I briefly caught a glimpse of us as sisters fleeing the same darkness, but in opposite directions. I have to be at the restaurant in 3 hours, I replied. Want to come in? I could teach you some plating techniques. Give you something interesting to photograph. She grinned, but it wasn't the flawless smile she gave our parents. I'd like that. I became aware that something had changed when we entered Marco's kitchen. My quest for vengeance has evolved beyond simply disproving my parents. It was about ending a cycle and making room for Tessa and me to be different from what our parents wanted us to be. I had to make it through Amelia's pop-up event first though. The stakes were bigger than ever now that we knew our mothers were engaged. My future was no longer the only consideration here. Tessa's was also at issue. I said, hey, and gave her an apron. Want to learn how to make Mom's favorite dessert? I have some ideas for improving it. Tessa smiled mischievously. Now that sounds like a photo opportunity. 3 days before the pop-up event, everything began to go wrong. While I was finishing up my menu in Marco's kitchen, Tessa stormed in the back door with her phone in her hand. She threw the screen at me and said, you need to see this? It was a gorgeously presented dish from Amelia's Instagram story that looked just like my go-to recipe. The one I had spent months creating. A sneak peek of our upcoming showcase, was the caption. The greatest inventions can occasionally be found in unlikely locations. I wiped my trembling hands on my apron. She's been watching me. Someone's been feeding her information. After saying, that's not all, Tessa swiped to another post. It was a set of pictures taken at Amelia's restaurant during a private investor meeting. One photo had my mother sitting at the table with her face animated in discussion in the background. The cutting board clattered against the knife I was holding. She's working with Mom? I overheard them yesterday. Tessa acknowledged. Mom's been telling potential investors about your unstable behavior and questionable finances. They're trying to make sure no one backs your restaurant plans. Marco showed up next to us, looking serious. The health inspector just called. Someone filed multiple complaints about our kitchen. They're coming tomorrow, right before your big prep day. There was a reason for the timing. Amelia was skilled at using my own mother as a weapon to harm me. I clutched the edge of the prep table as the room began to spin. I can't do this, I said. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm in over my head. Tessa's voice was stern as she said, "No. That's exactly what they want you to think. But look at this." She showed me pictures she had taken during our late-night cooking sessions by pulling up her camera roll. The photographs were breathtaking, showcasing not only the cuisine but also the love and imagination that went into each dish. "This is who you are, Elia. Not their lies. Not their manipulation." Marco, as he often did when he was making a point, picked up my fallen knife and tested its edge. "You know what separates a good chef from a great one? Not talent, not even creativity. It's what they do when everything goes wrong." But she stole my recipe. He gave me the knife and said, "So make a better one. Show them who you really are, not who they think you are." As I gazed at the knife in my palm, I recalled all the evenings I had spent honing my cuts, all the burns and scars I had acquired via perseverance rather than innate skill. Amelia may have taken my recipe, but she was unable to take away my enthusiasm. "How skilled are you at social media marketing, Tessa?" I said gently. She smiled. "Better than Amelia, that's for sure." "Good? Because I have an idea." I looked across at Marco. "Remember that fusion dish we talked about? The one that combines Mom's traditional family recipe with modern techniques?" His face lit up with a smile as he nodded. "The one that's too risky? Too controversial?" "Exactly. Amelia wants to play it safe, stick to stolen classics. Let's give them something they can't copy. Something that tells our whole story on a plate." I recreated my mother's signature dish over the course of the following few hours, changing every component. My childhood comfort food was transformed into something fresh that evoked both tradition and defiance. Every step was recorded by Tessa, who used her camera to record the transition from the old to the new. Even Marco appeared impressed when the last meal was prepared. His words, "This isn't just food. This is your declaration of independence." Tessa captioned the pictures simply when she uploaded them. Some recipes are passed down. Others are transformed. Coming soon to at Amelia Stone Showcase event. The post went viral in the local food community within a few hours. Amelia texted after making 2 calls. "You're making a mistake. Back down now or everything comes out, about the money, about your family, everything." For the first time that day, my hand was steady as I handed Tessa and Marco the text. When I said, "Let it come out, I'm done hiding," Marco gave a nod of approval. "Now you're cooking with fire." Tessa responded, "Just promise me one thing." As she lowered her camera. "When you face them, all of them, let me be there. Someone needs to document what happens when the golden child and the black sheep finally stand together." Retaliation and self-promotion were no longer the exclusive goals of the pop-up event. It was about finally writing my own life recipe and escaping all the ones that others had created. With the subtlety of a cooking fire, the pop-up event's night arrived. Other young cooks were vying for the interest of possible investors as I stood in Amelia's prep kitchen. My burners were inexplicably becoming cold, and my station had been accidentally positioned near to a drafty service door. "Equipment issues?" Amelia asked as she went past, her voice brimming with fictitious worry. Such a shame. But then, working with subpar tools builds character, doesn't it? I tried not to notice that she had placed my mother at a prominent table right in front of me, so I focused on my preparations. Evelyn Hawkins wore her critical face like a crown as she sat there like a queen at court. Someone shouted, 10 minutes to first service?" I grabbed for my sauce with trembling hands, only to discover that the container was empty. Only a few minutes ago, I had filled it and had turned my back. "Looking for something?" Amelia produced a well-known container. "Oh, this? Found it by the sink. Looked spoiled, so I tossed it. Health and safety, you know?" In a flash, 3 months of labor were gone. Recalling Marco's remarks about maintaining control under duress, I held my knife so tightly that my knuckles turned white. However, this was deliberate devastation rather than merely pressure. L.A. With her camera in hand, Tessa showed up at my station. "Mom's talking to the investors. She's showing them something on her phone." I felt sick to my stomach. I could see my mother making impassioned gestures through the service window, and the investors' expressions were getting serious as they turned to face me. With a shake of his head, one of them got up and left. Tessa muttered, "It's the lottery ticket. They know." The room began to swirl. Every cautious step I had taken toward freedom, everything I had created, was falling apart. No financiers. No sauce. There is no hope. Through my panic, a voice said, "Chef Hawkins? Health Department. We need to discuss some concerning allegations about your food handling practices." Naturally. The icing on the cake. I glanced around the kitchen, Taking in my mother's contented grin, Amelia's victorious smile, and the other chef's adamant avoidance of eye contact. This was the feeling of complete defeat. "I'm done," I muttered as I tied my apron. "They win." Tessa grabbed my arm and said, "No. Remember what you told me about Mom's recipe, about making it your own? So your sauce is gone. Make something better. Something they can't steal or destroy." "With what?" "I have nothing left." She took out her phone and showed me the pictures she had shot of our late-night cooking sessions, saying, "You have me?" At the final picture, she paused. Marco and I were in the kitchen, giggling as I tried a failed dish that had unintentionally become something fantastic and completely different. Marco had remarked that evening that sometimes the best dishes come from disasters. I glanced at the essential elements that were still there, at my almost empty station, at my sister's resolute countenance, and then at my mother, who was now approaching us with that well-known look of disappointment. She began. "This has gone far enough, it's time to—" "You're right," I interrupted, grabbing my knife. "It has gone far enough. Tessa, start filming." Amelia shouted, "What are you doing?" As I started slicing the few items I had left quickly. "I'm cooking," I declared, my knife moving deliberately. "But not your way, or Mom's way, or anyone else's way. My way." The service was 20 minutes away. No sauce, no financiers, no assistants, just my trembling hands and my sister's camera. Maybe it was the intention, but all I had planned was in ruins. Perhaps in order to discover what I truly needed, I had to let go of everything I believed I desired. "Last call for plating," was said by someone. I gazed at my creation, honest, straightforward, the product of defiance and despair. It wasn't flawless. I hadn't even planned for it. However, it was truly mine. With her camera trained on my hands, Tessa questioned, "Ready?" I took the first plate and nodded. I could see my mother and the other investors waiting through the service window. This was my final opportunity to demonstrate that the greatest works can occasionally emerge from the darkest situations. After saying, "Time to serve," I pushed through the door. And I hope they're hungry for the truth. It was so quiet in the dining room when I served my homemade dish. I observed the investors leaning forward through Tessa's camera, their faces changing from doubt to interest. My mother's hands showed her anxiety by twisting her napkin under the table, but her face stayed purposefully expressionless. One investor examined the plate and remarked, "This isn't what was advertised." "No," I concurred. "It's better." This is what happens when someone tries to sabotage your carefully planned menu. You either give up, or you create something new. Amelia came out of the kitchen and I met her gaze. I turned to Amelia and asked, "Would you like to explain why my original sauce disappeared? Or should we ask my mother about the convenient timing of the health inspector's visit?" My mother said sharply, "Li," as a warning. However, I wasn't done yet. "It's funny, Mom. I tried to replicate your recipes for years in an attempt to win your approval, but tonight, when everything was taken away, I finally got it. Real hunger produces the best food. For recognition as much as for food. For approval." Now that the investors were trying the meal, their appreciative mutterings were becoming more audible and Tessa walked around the table, recording their responses, the way they nodded their heads and raised their eyebrows at one another. The principal investor remarked, "The combination of traditional and modern techniques is unexpected. The harmony of flavors. It narrates a tale." "That's because it's my narrative," I responded, "the genuine one, not the one they wanted to share. About creating something out of nothing. About converting rejection into motivation." With her poise crumbling, Amelia went forward and said, "You think you're so special? A tenacious underdog who—" "No," I said, "I believe that I am just what you fear, someone who no longer need your approval, any one of you." I hadn't seen my father since Christmas morning, so his arrival was a shock to the room as he entered and stopped short at the scene in front of him. "What's happening?" he insisted. "Your daughter," the principal investor stated, "is going to get an offer of support for her restaurant idea. If she's interested, that is." My father's expression changed from one of bewilderment to something I had never seen before, perhaps recognition or regret. "The lottery ticket," he replied softly. "Isn't that how you accomplished all of this? The Christmas present you gave us." I said, "The one you never bothered to open," and I said, "Yes." Suddenly my mother got up and said, "You had no right to—" "Mom, to what?" "To want something different than what you planned," I yelled. "To be successful without your consent? You should ask your golden child how she feels about medical school," I said, gesturing to Tessa, who was still shooting. "Find out what she truly wants to accomplish with her life. All eyes shifted to Tessa, and the room fell silent once again as she dropped her camera, her hands calm despite her trembling voice. "I want to be a photographer," she said. "And La's going to hire me to shoot for her restaurant's marketing." "No one is being hired by you." "This was a publicity stunt," Amelia yelled. The main investor stepped in and said, "These investors are very impressed, Miss Hawkins, both with the food and with how you handled unexpected challenges." My father came up and reached into his jacket, taking out a wrinkled, still unscratched scratch-off ticket that I had given him for Christmas. "I don't know why, but I kept it," he remarked. "If it's okay with you, I'd like to scratch it right now. Perhaps because that was the last thing you gave us before." He cleared his throat. "And I would like to invest money in your restaurant, regardless of its value." "Hey, Roger," my mom objected. However, he raised his hand and said, "No, Evelyn. We've already caused enough harm by attempting to dictate their lives. Take a look at what Ella produced tonight, despite all the odds being against her. Take a look at Tessa's images. We weren't afraid of these failures. They are artists." "I think we have some details to discuss, Miss Hawkins," said the principal investor, grinning and passing a business card across the table. "Every one of us." I looked at my father's unscratched ticket after picking up the card. "Keep it," I replied. "Some gifts are worth more unopened." I was too absorbed staring at my father's face when he finally saw me, not as a letdown, but as a chef, as myself, to observe Amelia storming away. I turned to the investors and said, "So, let's talk about opening night." The restaurant was packed, as it had been every night since it opened, and I was standing in my own kitchen, 6 months after the pop-up event, watching the dinner service unfold through the pass. The walls were covered in Tessa's photos, which included candid candids of our family's adventure as well as beautiful views of our hallmark dishes. Marco entered with a familiar envelope as the door slid open. He handed it to me and said, "Special delivery. Found this at my restaurant." Amelia's was the return address, and there was only one page inside. "Last week, I shut down my restaurant. It turns out that building success on other people's formulas isn't worth much. You were correct. You must be the one who is hungry." As I folded the letter, I reflected on how, somewhere down the line, revenge had lost its appeal. "Have you watched the special today?" I nodded toward a meal that was waiting at the pass as I asked Marco. He grinned when he saw my mother's famous recipe, modified but still hearty. "What was her reaction?" "She cried," I said. Then spent an hour telling me everything I'd done wrong while secretly eating every bite. I could see my family at their usual table through the kitchen window. My mother sat straight-backed as usual, but her eyes kept wandering to the kitchen with what appeared to be pride, and my father was showing Tessa something on her camera, presumably talking about her upcoming gallery show. My line cook said, "Chef, we have a situation." At the kitchen entrance, I turned to see a familiar face, Amelia, who appeared smaller and less assured. She blurted out, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I wanted to know if prep cooks are still being hired by you." I would have cherished this moment of defeat 6 months ago, but now, when I looked at her, I saw part of myself. That same hunger, just focused in the wrong direction for too long. The kitchen was silent, and everyone watched to see how I would respond. I said, "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., and be on time. Additionally, this time, Amelia, bring your own recipes." With a look of relief on her face, she nodded and rushed out. "You're not the same chef who burned with revenge in my kitchen," Marco said, giving me a shoulder squeeze. "No," I said. "I feel better now." Speaking of which, I took out the lottery ticket that my father had returned to me last week, stating that certain presents needed to be completed. He had kept it unscratched for months. "Do you want to take the lead?" I extended an offer to Marco. "Some things are worth more unscratched," he said, shaking his head. "Sometimes we learn more from the wonder of what might have been than from knowledge." I tucked the ticket under my chef's coat, where it lay close to my heart as a reminder of how far I'd come, while the dinner rush was intensifying and tickets were pouring in. Mom is criticizing your plating once more," Tessa called from the dining room. "Tell her if she wants to reorganize my garnishes, she'll have to put on an apron and do it herself," I said, laughing and grabbing my knife. My mother surprised me by showing up at the kitchen doorway a few moments later, already rolling up her sleeves. "Well," she remarked, "would you demonstrate for me how this updated version of my recipe functions?" I gave her an apron and watched as she tied it using motions that were similar to mine. I learned that some wounds heal slowly, but that they do, especially when they are seasoned with time, truth, and a little bit of forgiveness. Making room at my station, I said, "Okay, Mom. Let me show you how hunger enhances the flavor of everything." A cacophony of sizzling pans, Clicking dishes and calling tickets filled the kitchen as it hummed around us. My rules, my restaurant, and my family, the one I was born into and the one I created, are all mine, no matter how imperfect. Additionally, an unscratched ticket in my chef's coat served as a reminder that sometimes the finest form of retaliation isn't providing cold food but rather inviting your adversaries to a warm table and teaching them how to prepare meals for themselves. My parents skipped my wedding because I married before my perfect sister. Now their perfect family image is finally crumbling. After being together for 4 years, I, 32F, got married 8 months ago. Except for my sister Malene, 30F, and my parents, everyone went to the wedding. My parents' decision to skip the event was startling, but I wasn't overly shocked by my sister's absence because we've never really gotten along. However, considering our past, I should have anticipated it. I'll give you some background on our family's dynamics. I can't completely blame my parents for constantly favoring my sister over me. Throughout her life, she has been exceptionally good at almost everything. She was the center of attention in every room she visited as soon as she could walk. She won every spelling bee, science fair, and talent show in elementary school. Class president, valedictorian, and prom queen were all very much the same in high school. Tall, slender, and attractive enough, she pursued modeling while in college before concentrating on her business degree. She got her first modeling job during her sophomore year, and I can still remember it. To celebrate, my parents invited all of our family members and her friends to a lavish party. Her first professional headshot was framed and hung in our living room, where it remains to this day, directly above the fireplace. The same year I received my degree in computer science, they merely murmured, "Well done," and resumed organizing Malene's next photo session. She immediately climbed the corporate ladder after graduating and landing a job at a prominent company. She already has a corner office and a corporate car at the age of 30, making her a senior executive. In the meantime, I work for a respectable computer company as a mid-level software developer. Although I'm pleased with my work and it's a decent profession, it's not the type of employment that makes parents boast in front of the family. In addition, I'm bigger and shorter than my sister. My mother made crude remarks about my appearance, signed me up for workout classes I didn't want to attend, and put me on diets all the time when I was growing up. She would say, "Malene never struggles with her weight." Or, "You could look as nice as your sister if you just put in a little more effort." Even though I had learned to ignore these remarks by high school, they had an impact. Over the years, I've accepted these distinctions. I ultimately came to terms with the fact that my parents never took as much delight in my accomplishments as they did in Malene's. What was my option? I tried to get their approval for years by attending classes they recommended, joining clubs they encouraged, and even attempted modeling for a short time, a failure my sister never lets me forget. However, nothing was ever sufficient. I was merely the second daughter, and they were completely enamored with my sister's achievements. I gave up attempting to impress them sometime in my mid-20s. I concentrated on creating my own life, growing professionally on my own terms, and forming bonds with individuals that respected me for who I am. To be honest, following that, things have improved. Knowing that my parents were constantly concerned about maintaining appearances, I kept my interactions with them superficial in order to prevent conflict. During our mandatory Christmas meals and sporadic family get-togethers, I would nod and grin while they raved about Malene's most recent job, lover, or vacation spot. Since they had Malene to swoon over, they didn't seem to notice my emotional distance. Then, at a computer conference, I ran upon my spouse through a mutual friend. He noticed me, actually saw me, unlike my family. He liked my dry sense of humor, my ability to code, and yes, even my body type, right from the beginning. He never once said I should change or make comparisons to other people. He proposed to me after 4 years of dating when we were alone at home, enjoying takeaway and our favorite TV in the background. It was flawless. Naturally, I told my folks that I was engaged last year. My first clue should have been their response. There was no congratulation, only stillness. My mother then questioned whether I was certain I wanted to jump right in and recommended that I might want to improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father didn't say much at all. During the engagement party, my husband noted their odd reaction, which I was too anxious to fully comprehend at the time. They crouched over my mother's phone in a corner for the majority of the evening. My husband then informed me that he had heard them talking to Malene on the phone, who was clearly crying. They were talking about how this wasn't the plan, and how they never expected Rebecca to get married first, according to what he vaguely heard. There were some minor setbacks during the wedding planning process. Despite not even being engaged at the time, my mother had already made many wedding Pinterest boards for Malene and was not interested in assisting me in selecting a dress or location. My mother merely remarked that it was practical and suitable for my figure. When I selected my dress, a straightforward yet exquisite A-line gown that made me feel lovely. My future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had, and I ended up working together on the majority of the preparations. I carefully reviewed and double-checked the guest list with my spouse to be sure no one was overlooked before sending out both electronic and paper wedding invitations. I am certain that my parents received theirs because the electronic invitations included red receipts. I called, texted, and emailed them several times after realizing they hadn't RSVP'd. My mails were either ignored or met with evasive responses stating that they were very busy and needed to check their schedules. I couldn't waste too much energy worrying about it because I was too busy getting ready for the wedding. My in-laws were incredibly helpful, offering assistance with everything from seating maps to floral arrangements. Even at the lovely bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the painfully obvious absence of my own family was never brought up. Even though my parents weren't there, the wedding day itself was beautiful. We held a laid-back afternoon celebration after the morning wedding in a garden setting. Everyone was right when they said we looked so content and in love. But there were times when their absence felt like a physical anguish, such as when I saw the front row seats empty or at the father-daughter dance that I was not able to attend. I sought answers after the honeymoon and wedding. They said they were deeply hurt, that they had never gotten a formal invitation when I eventually reached them on the phone. My mother launched into a lengthy tirade about how careless I was, how she had always wanted to assist in organizing her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't comprehend why I would leave them out of such a significant occasion. I was perplexed by this since I was positive we had given them both kinds of invitations. During the call, I verified that we had indeed sent them by looking through our records. Even the physical invitation's delivery was confirmed. I didn't confront them about their attempts to gaslight me. I just said I was sorry for the error and hung up. Later, my husband brought up a number of incidents that demonstrated their true intentions, such as the way they appeared surprised rather than delighted when we told them we were engaged, or the way they continued coming up with reasons not to assist with the wedding planning. Because he didn't want to add to my anxiety during the wedding planning process, he hadn't brought up these findings earlier, but in retrospect, the pattern was clear. The idea that I, the less successful daughter, was getting married before their beloved Malene was too much for them to bear. Their demeanor simply served to validate what I had always suspected but had resisted, that I would never be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most depressing thing was learning that even my wedding day, which ought to have been a celebration of love and fresh starts, turned into yet another front in their never-ending war to preserve their ideal family image, with Malene at its core. Malene recently got engaged to someone she's been dating for a year, according to family members I spoke with. In family group conversations that I don't participate in, my parents openly express their excitement about organizing an elaborate wedding for her. They are already boasting about securing upscale locations and luxury gowns, and my mother is taking Malene to private fittings at upscale stores. All the mother-daughter time I was not allowed. It's intriguing that a large number of our family are suddenly refusing to go to Malene's wedding and engagement party. My parents' actions at my wedding apparently became a topic of conversation in the family. I just tell my family members what I think is real when they inquire as to why my parents didn't attend my wedding. They couldn't bear it when I married before their beloved daughter. I present the facts as I perceive them, without embellishment or an attempt to win sympathy. My parents got in touch with me a few days ago and accused me of purposefully attempting to spoil Malene's wedding. According to their claims, the relatives they have spoken to are using reasons to avoid going to any of her wedding-related festivities. My cousin, to whom my sister vented, informed her that people are reluctant to come because they have heard about my parents' treatment of me. My parents claim that because I'm envious of my sister's impending lavish wedding, I'm spreading false stories. The problem is that I'm only telling folks the truth about what happened. Perhaps they should consider their conduct instead of blaming me for the results if the truth makes them appear terrible. As things continue to change, I'm finding it harder and harder to keep up the appearance of a relationship with my parents. Their behavior during my wedding finally made it clear to me that I would never be sufficient for them, regardless of what I did. Their absence at my wedding is no longer the most difficult aspect. It's coming to terms with the fact that I never had the kind, encouraging parents I always desired. I'm concentrating on creating a life with someone who genuinely appreciates me for who I am right now, but I'll keep you updated if anything important changes. First update: since my last post, which was 2 weeks ago, a lot has transpired. I ultimately made the decision to speak with my parents face-to-face over their actions at my wedding and their current charges that I ruined my sister's special day after reading your encouraging remarks. I felt it was time to put everything on the table when they began texting me about their tarnished family history. My parents quickly started making accusations during our phone call, saying that I was jealous of Malene and had planned the entire thing. I did something I had never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they had anticipated. In place of defending myself as I usually would, I said to them, "You're correct. I'm envious. Not Maline's career, not her accomplishments, not her appearance. I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've shown her, which you never even made an effort to show me." There was a pause in the line. My mother then began claiming that I was exaggerating and that they had always treated us equally. Something broke inside of me at that moment. Feelings that had been repressed for years came flooding out. I informed them of each birthday when Maline's most recent success eclipsed my own accomplishments. When Maline had a modeling callback, my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner. About how her prom outfit cost more than the total cost of my college textbooks for a year. I continued despite my father's attempts to cut me off by accusing me of exaggerating. I talked about how it was to watch them spend years organizing my sister's fictitious wedding while showing no interest in my own. I told them how painful it was to see my parents' seats vacant and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything, from wedding preparation to clothing buying. Their reaction was instructive. They flipped it on me rather than accepting any of my arguments. "Why did you never speak up if you felt this way?" As if I hadn't tried to speak with them for years, my mother insisted. My father went on to say that by discussing these emotions with our family members, I was being unjust and spiteful. My mother said something at that point that ultimately clarified everything. "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths as to try to ruin Maline's wedding out of spite, but we always knew you were insecure about her success," she stated. "This is not how we brought you up." I became aware that they couldn't even hear me. They believed that their behavior and my emotions had nothing to do with the entire circumstance. It has to do with Maline's reaction. They were more worried about her impending nuptials than the hurt they had caused me, even during this discussion about their absence from my wedding. I didn't attempt to make things better for the first time in my life. I didn't retract or apologize. Rather, I expressed my thoughts to them directly. "You're correct on one point. I was raised by you. You instilled in me the belief that I would never measure up. That Maline's accomplishments would always be more significant than mine. That upholding your ideal family image was more essential than my feelings. However, you also taught me that I deserve better than this, which was something you didn't mean to teach me." Before my father spoke, there was a long pause. He spoke in a cool, collected tone. "Maybe it's time for us to stop acting like we're bad parents, since you've already determined that we are and you obviously take pleasure in seeing us suffer. Since you are family, we assumed you would assist in resolving this issue, but it is clear that you have made your own decisions." The last blow was delivered by my mother. "Perhaps you simply couldn't cope with not being the center of attention, even though we always tried to treat you both fairly. Rebecca, that's not our fault. You made the decision to play the victim." I refrained from arguing. Why would it matter? Everything I had been saying had just been validated by them. They were unable to admit their involvement in any of anything, even at this last discussion. I just hung up and said goodbye. I was surprised to feel relieved after the call. Tears were shed, to be sure, but they weren't the frantic, heartbreaking ones I remember from my early years. They were liberating tears. For the first time, I had expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I felt. Later, my husband saw me gazing at the sunset from our back porch. He sat next to me and grasped my hand without saying anything. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him after a time. "No, but you have," he said, squeezing my hand. "And that is what counts." He is correct. I've changed. The young child who frantically tried to win her parents' approval is no longer there. They no longer need to validate the woman who came out of that last conversation. Although acknowledging that my parents will never be the people I need them to be is painful, it is not as painful as holding out hope that they would change. For the first time, I don't really care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama. I've had my say, and they now have to deal with whatever comes up. The most peculiar aspect? I feel as though a burden I've carried my entire life has finally been lifted. Although it's not the happy ending I had hoped for with my parents, perhaps it was the one I needed, the ability to quit striving for love that ought to have come naturally. Second update. 3 days have passed since my run-in with our parents, and things have taken a surprising turn. Maline made the decision to become involved in the drama, but her strategy failed horribly. My sister sent me a thoughtfully composed message yesterday morning. She had developed a condescending tone over the years, and it was evident in her text. "What you said to your parents was totally inappropriate. They have helped us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You cannot simply blame them for being poor parents because you are insecure about the decisions you have made in life." She continued the message with her typical blend of moral superiority and covert jabs. I understand that your wedding wasn't exactly what you had envisioned, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have put in a lot of effort to meet specific standards. Rebecca, not everything needs to be a contest. I didn't bother to answer. I've discovered that interacting with her merely provides her with more ammunition after years of putting up with her manipulative conduct. I just blocked her number instead. Malene has never been one to put up with being ignored, so I assumed that would be the end of it. My husband, who was laughing so hard that he could not speak, called me at work a few hours later. Malene was apparently unable to get in touch with me directly, so she found his personal number, probably via a common acquaintance, and sent him a string of texts outlining the precise reasons why our sister relationship has never been good. She began her initial communication to him in a sufficiently professional manner. As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out. However, it soon turned into her actual motivations. She informed my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave in a more suitable manner because he was the new man in Rebecca's life. The messages become increasingly patronizing. Family dynamics are complex, she told my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, adding that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture. She advised him to assist me in seeing reason before I irreparably harm family relationships. Her attempt to play on what she believed to be his social climbing impulses was the true kicker, though. In fact, she wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects and, by extension, yours." Having always been able to see through Malene's facade, my spouse thought her attempt at manipulation was humorous. He particularly liked her presumption that her business rank or the prospect of networking opportunities would somehow impress him. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We went over the messages together when I got home that night. I was laughing with my hubby instead of feeling offended or upset. Seeing Malene's deceptive methods exposed, particularly when they were aimed at someone who was totally impervious to them, was liberating. I learned something significant about my sister as a result of this encounter. She is still that insecure adolescent who needs to tear others down in order to feel superior, despite all of her achievements and success. It's clear how little she knows about good relationships that she believed she could control me by manipulating my husband. When her direct approach failed, she swiftly turned to trying to use my husband against me, which was the most revealing aspect. She used to do precisely that in high school. She attempted to turn my friends against me when she was unable to bully me directly. Different decade, same strategies. With this fresh viewpoint, I now understand how Malene's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry throughout our early years. She made a concerted effort to keep her status as the favorite child, always telling our parents, and me, how much better she was. She had to overshadow whatever I accomplished. She had to point out my shortcomings to everyone I made friends with. My response to her games is different now. Her messages would have caused me to fall into self-doubt 10 years ago. I would have been upset and hurt 5 years ago. Today? Simply put, I'm sick of the drama and find her blatant attempts at manipulation amusing. My husband's response was ideal. Rather than becoming embroiled in her drama, he merely responded, "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day." Malene sent one last message after not receiving the desired response. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, Malene's attempt to assist has further strengthened my resolve to keep my distance from the destructive dynamics of my family. Nothing has changed, as evidenced by her messages to my spouse. She is still the same cunning individual who feels the need to dictate every story and who perceives any departure from her ideal family script as a danger. Knowing that her attempts at persuasion were so totally unsuccessful is perhaps the most pleasant aspect of the entire incident. She succeeded in bringing my spouse and I closer together rather than causing us to drift apart. Totally unconcerned by her fears of social repercussions, we joked about her texts and planned a weekend trip during the evening. I've come to understand that true family isn't about upholding facades or dictating stories. It's about standing together, laughing together, and supporting one another when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'd be better off keeping a safe distance from Malene's wedding drama. Instead of getting sucked into my family's never-ending power struggles, my husband and I have made the decision to concentrate on creating our own happiness. Success is said to be the best form of retaliation, but I'm coming to realize that real success isn't about impressing people. It's about accepting your decisions and surrounding yourself with individuals that encourage rather than impede your own development. I feel more successful than ever by that metric. Third update. After my sister's unsuccessful attempt to control my husband 2 weeks ago, things have taken unanticipated turns. The situation is becoming worse despite my parents' desperate attempts to repair their reputation. I found out through family ties that my parents have been on a mad quest to correct the narrative. They have been phoning each relative separately and accusing me of spreading vile tales because I'm envious of Maline's ideal wedding. They claim that I'm just resentful since her wedding will be far more sophisticated and gorgeous than mine was. According to their most recent tale, I purposefully left them out of my wedding so I could act like the victim. It's funny that they still reside in the same home they've owned for 30 years and have the same email addresses since the invention of email, but they're saying I sent their invitation to an old email address and an old physical address. The good news is that their attempts to limit the harm are failing miserably. Our family members don't believe it. Actually, a number of family members have shared their personal accounts of my parents' history of partiality. According to one aunt, my mother had previously engaged in similar antics at family weddings in an effort to guarantee that Maline was the life of the party. The way my extended family has reacted to my parents' manipulation is the most fulfilling development. Important family members, some of whom were expected to have significant parts in the event, have stopped supporting Maline's wedding. They may no longer have access to the exclusive location they were able to get through family ties. Even a family friend's luxury garment business has unexpectedly experienced scheduling conflicts. At a family get-together last weekend, things reached a breaking point. It seems that when someone naively inquired about my wedding pictures, my mother became upset. Out of jealousy, she started a defensive tirade about how I had changed after getting married and was attempting to destroy the family. Her tantrum backfired, stunning a number of relatives who were unaware of the circumstances and further harming their well-maintained reputation. It's especially ironic that my parents' frantic efforts to maintain their ideal family facade are the reason it's falling apart. Each time they attempt to justify their absence from my wedding, they wind up disclosing more about who they really are. People are becoming more aware of their deception the more they attempt to portray me as the bad guy. Family members are now picking sides after previously remaining impartial. Recently, even my father's brother, who had always kept silent to maintain harmony, apologized for not speaking up sooner about how they treated me. He has made the decision not to go to any of Maline's wedding-related festivities with his family. I don't have to answer any of this explicitly, so I haven't. The truth is taking care of everything for me. Maline and my parents always wind up revealing more of their destructive conduct when they attempt to twist the tale. It comes out that all those years of remaining silent and putting up with their treatment in an effort to keep the peace was really just a way of allowing their actions. My husband said it in the best possible words. They constructed a facade of the ideal family over many years, but it was based on emotional manipulation and partiality. Eventually, it was going to fall apart. I'm doing better than ever, personally. I no longer have to worry about attempting to win my parents' approval. The stress of controlling Maline's emotions has subsided. I'm not concerned about upholding their ideal family image for the first time in my life. Sometimes the best retaliation is just letting the truth speak for itself rather than taking action. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the courage to advocate for myself. You have no idea how much your guidance and encouragement have meant to me along this path. Sometimes you need to see what true family support looks like from strangers you met online. I took back my house and left my mother homeless after she disowned me for not attending my sister's wedding. Hey Reddit, my mom's favorite was always clear when I was growing up. My younger sister Rachel, 37F, and I, 42F, are the children of my mother, Karen, 62F. It seemed as though I had vanished from the world the instant Rachel was born. I don't want to come across as theatrical, but this is the reality. My mother was naturally quite protective of Rachel because she was born underweight and ill. I get that it must have been frightening for her to have a sick kid, but Rachel was the only child that Karen cared for, rather than merely the family's baby. Rachel received royal treatment. Her needs, wants, and moods were the center of attention. For example, Mom would hand-feed Rachel until she was well into middle school since she disliked eating by herself. Mom would simply complete any school projects or homework for Rachel. No questions asked, Mom allowed Rachel to stay at home if she didn't feel like going to school. And then there was me. I had clothes, food, and other essentials, so I wasn't completely disregarded, but I was alone emotionally. Unless it had to do with Rachel, Mom never truly cared about me. Mom was preoccupied at a spa and forgot about a dentist appointment I had when I was around 10 years old. After hours of waiting outside the school, a family friend saw me and offered to drive me home. My mother pretended it wasn't a huge thing when I returned. "Oh, I thought you'd figure it out," she simply said. The only person who actually saw me was my father, Michael, may he rest in peace. He wasn't home as much as I would have liked because he worked so much, but when he was, he tried his best. When Karen and Rachel weren't there, Dad and I would go out for movies or ice cream. He would give me extra cash for birthdays or school outings, but he would urge me not to tell my mother. In retrospect, I believe he was attempting to compensate me for feeling so unnoticed. But Dad could not deny the favoritism no matter how hard he tried. Everything was always better for Rachel. I had to save money or work for what I desired. Rachel, however, only needed to ask, and it would materialize. I requested a bike one Christmas, and Rachel made a last-minute request for the same item. Rachel received a brand new, gleaming bike beneath the tree on Christmas morning. I received some socks. "You're older," Mom responded when I inquired why. "You can get one for yourself by saving money." However, it was more than just material possessions. Rachel's happiness was Karen's obsession. Mom would move quickly to resolve whatever small problem Rachel was having, such as a friend not texting her back or receiving a poor grade. I quickly learned not to bother going to her for anything, though, as she would tell me to stop being so dramatic, or figure it out like an adult, whenever I was upset about something. Of course Rachel took it all in. Why wouldn't she? She was living the dream since Mom took care of everything for her, so she didn't have to do anything. Rachel eventually stopped learning even the most fundamental life skills. She was incapable of managing her own schedule, cooking, or even cleaning. Rachel was totally reliant on her mother since she protected her from everything. I didn't know how toxic the dynamic was until high school. Mom would complete Rachel's schoolwork after she would sob to her about how difficult her lessons were. Mom pleaded with the principal to have Rachel's grades modified after she failed high school, accusing the teachers of failing to recognize her unique needs. Naturally, it didn't succeed, but it demonstrated the lengths Karen will go to in order to shield Rachel from responsibility of any kind. However, I was supposed to be self-sufficient. I had to work things out on my own if I had trouble in school. I had to use the money I earned from babysitting if I wanted to participate in extracurricular activities. And Karen would tell me, "You're the older sister, you need to set an example," if I ever ventured to voice my displeasure. I was eager to be out of high school by the time I graduated. I never looked back after enrolling at a college in a different city. I never made a better choice than to move away. I was able to breathe for the first time. I didn't have to compete for Karen's attention or continually compare myself to Rachel. I might simply be myself. Rachel, meanwhile, remained at home and didn't leave until she was 26 years old and married. Karen continued to be involved in her life even at that point, phoning her 5 times a day to inquire about topics like, "What did you eat?" or "How is your hubby doing?" She even unexpectedly came up to bring Rachel groceries or clean her house, even though Rachel and her husband were more than capable of handling those tasks on their own. For my part, I was going about my life. I obtained a job after graduating from college and began constructing my future. Dad kept in touch with me by giving me frequent phone calls and coming to see me when he could. Not so much Karen. She would occasionally comment on my Facebook posts or send me a birthday text, but that was about it. I honestly didn't give a damn. Her unrelenting criticism and partiality no longer burdened me, and I was joyful. In hindsight, I believe Karen's fixation on Rachel stemmed from a desire for control. She never allowed Rachel to grow up because she wanted her to always be in need of her. I had to fend for myself after being thrown out of the nest early. Although it was painful at the time, I now consider it a blessing. While Rachel became totally dependent on Karen, I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. The dynamic remained the same even after I left. Karen was Rachel's facilitator, I was the forgotten child, and Rachel was the golden child. Some things never change, which is humorous. Not funny haha, but funny in a depressing manner. But everything did 11 years ago. At first, Dad's frequent coughing didn't seem like a huge concern. He blamed it on a recalcitrant cold or allergies. However, he didn't get better as the weeks stretched into months. He actually grew worse. He was usually exhausted, breathless, and simply not himself. Nevertheless, he continued to labor because he was a selfless, industrious man who always put the needs of others before his own. Karen didn't appear to notice at all. She was too preoccupied with her daily schedule of yoga sessions, spa visits, and whatever else occupied her time. After her first marriage ended, Rachel was back at home by that point. She didn't appear to be really worried about Dad's health, and she wasn't working either. They seemed unwilling to face the inconvenience of admitting that something was amiss. I was trying to keep some distance from all the family dysfunction while establishing my career in a distant place. During our frequent phone conversations, I could sense that something wasn't right. He sounded more worn out and weaker. He dismissed my question about whether he had seen a doctor, claiming to be all right. I knew he wasn't though. When he eventually went to the hospital following an especially severe coughing spell, things reached a breaking point. A serious lung infection was the diagnosis. When I learned, I immediately dropped everything and ran home. I was appalled when I arrived. Dad was laying in bed by himself, looking so weak and ill. Rachel and Karen? They were out getting manicures. Karen pretended to be shocked to see me when they returned. She even attempted to give me a hug, but I refused. When I questioned her why she wasn't with Dad, she said that she had errands to run. Both had recently had their nails done and were carrying shopping bags, so it was clear they had just left the spa. I spent as much time as I could with Dad when he was admitted to the hospital. Every now and then, Karen would stop by, but only for a few minutes. Rachel? She said it was too hard for her to see him in that state, and she hardly turned there at all. I was balancing everything at the same time, including communicating with doctors, controlling his medicine, and attempting to make him comfortable. On most nights, I even slept in a chair by his bed. It was frustrating that Karen didn't participate. It's not like she was too busy to be there because she didn't work. However, she pretended that going to the hospital was a huge hassle. The day she stated, "He's in good hands with the nurses," will always stick in my memory. Should I just sit there, or what? Yes, Karen, supporting your husband is exactly what you're meant to do. Dad was released from the hospital after a week. We hired a nurse to assist at home because he still required round-the-clock care. Karen was expected to take charge and assume greater responsibilities, yet she continued to be untrustworthy. She would leave for hours to run errands, only to return with shopping bags, or she would fail to give him his medications on time. On one occasion, she chose to stop at the salon before picking up an oxygen tank for him. I had already made arrangements for someone else to deliver it by the time she arrived home. Rachel wasn't any better. She said she avoided Dad completely because she couldn't bear to see him in such a vulnerable state. She spent much of her time in her room watching TV or browsing on her phone. She even went on vacation with her friends during one of Dad's worst bouts, leaving me to manage everything by myself. In the end, I resigned my job to care for Dad full-time. To be honest, I didn't want to leave him alone with Karen or Rachel, and I didn't trust them to do it. He was worthy of better. In order to keep him from feeling lonely, I prepared his meals, assisted him with his physical therapy, and made sure he had company. I loved him, so even though it was exhausting, I would do it all over again if I had to. As Dad's health deteriorated, Karen did make an attempt to work harder, but it was too late. She would sit next to him, but she would be glued to her phone, either talking to Rachel or posting on social media. It seemed as though she was unable to fully focus on him. Rachel only arrived after being coerced by Karen, and even then, she would excuse herself and depart after a short while. A few months later, Dad died. The nurse, I, and a few of his friends who had come to bid him farewell were all around him. Rachel and Karen. They weren't present. Rachel was out with friends, and Karen had gone to some sort of wellness retreat. When it became apparent that Dad was running low on time, I contacted both of them, but they did not answer. The funeral went by quickly. I was tired and heartbroken, but I still had to put up with the bullshit from Rachel and Karen. As though she hadn't been ignoring all the warning signals for months, Karen talked to her friends about how unexpected Dad's death was for the majority of the funeral. Rachel made a huge show of crying, but it felt so forced. She hadn't given a damn when it counted. Dad's attorney called me a few weeks after the funeral to discuss his will. I was hoping for a tiny inheritance or a memento, but nothing more. However, I was taken aback when I met with the attorney. Dad had bequeathed the house, his savings, and his assets to me. Rachel and Karen received nothing. Given how little his wife and youngest daughter cared for him, I could only imagine how much anguish Dad must have been going through in his last months. He expressed his appreciation for everything I'd done for him by leaving everything to me. It caused a firestorm, though. When Karen and Rachel learned, they were furious. In fact, Rachel yelled at the attorney, stating that she could never be subjected to this treatment by her father. Karen called and insisted that I give them a piece of the inheritance. I declined. For the sake of my sanity, I disconnected from Rachel and Karen. Their sense of entitlement was draining. I eventually met my husband after relocating to the city where I was employed and concentrating on starting again. We relocated abroad for his work, got married, and had a baby. To be honest, I didn't feel the need to tell Karen or Rachel about it because it was a new beginning. After a few years, I became a mother to my daughter. Karen appeared at my place out of the blue. It was unexpected to see her at my door as I hadn't spoken to her in years. She appeared more worn out and less put together. She sobbed, expressed regret, and expressed her want to be involved in my daughter's life. She even acknowledged that she felt bad about the way she raised me. She said she just wanted to make amends because she had been living with remorse ever since Dad died. Although I must admit that I didn't trust her, I chose to give her a chance. It was all right for a time. Karen would occasionally send gifts and make video calls to see how my daughter was doing. For once it felt normal. Then, predictably, the hints began. I thought it would go away, so I disregarded Karen when she casually said how hard life had been for her since I took everything, or how she was having financial difficulties. Karen gave me a call around a month ago. The fact that she seemed enthusiastic made me uneasy right away because Karen doesn't call unless she needs something. She struck up a discussion by inquiring about my spouse and daughter, which was already strange. Then she revealed the shocking news that Rachel was getting married once more. As you recall, Rachel's first marriage ended almost a year later. She never really put her life back on track after moving back in with Karen. Rachel and I hadn't spoken for more than 10 years, so this news was unexpected. Karen talked endlessly on Rachel's significance of this wedding, how it was a new beginning for her, and how pleased the family would be. I congratulated her, was courteous, and assumed that was the end of it. But obviously not. Karen went on to say something like, "You know, Rachel has had a really difficult time organizing this wedding within her budget. After everything she's been through, she deserves a lovely day." I knew where this was going, so I said nothing. "I was hoping you could help out with the expenses," she finally added. "Considering everything your father left you, it's the least you can do." I was astounded. To begin with, Rachel and I don't even communicate. Second, what level of entitlement is required to demand payment from someone who isn't even invited to the wedding? Indeed, Karen made it apparent that I was not invited. "Oh, we assumed you wouldn't want to travel with a baby, but of course you're welcome to come," Karen said in an attempt to backtrack when I brought this up. "Your sister is getting married, so you don't need an invitation." I bluntly told her no. I had nothing to pay for. She attempted to place the blame on me by claiming that I had an obligation to assist Rachel as the older sister. She also mentioned Dad's wealth, saying that while Rachel was struggling, I was hoarding the family fortune. I informed her that Rachel and I were not romantically involved and advised her to get in touch with Rachel directly if she needed assistance. Rachel, predictably, never did. Karen didn't accept rejection. She kept bringing up the same point in her voicemails and texts over the course of the following few weeks. I was disappointing Rachel, I was self-centered, and I didn't care about my family. "If you don't help, it will ruin Rachel's big day and everyone will know it's your fault," she even stated. The problem is that Rachel and Karen were behaving as though I owed them money. But when I needed assistance, where were they? I was the one who put everything on hold to take care of Dad while he was ill. While everybody continued living their lives, I was the one who remained by his side. And now they wanted me to come through and save the day after years of silence? Not at all. Karen made matters worse by asserting that Rachel had already reserved the space and paid deposits for musicians, caterers, and decorations. Since the invitations had already been sent, she claimed that canceling everything would make the family look foolish. If they couldn't afford it, how did they plan all of this? I asked her. What did she say? "You were what we needed." That was the last straw. I informed Karen that because I wasn't providing them any money, she could solve the problem on her own. She broke down in tears and threatened to cut me out of her life if I didn't help. "You already treated me like I didn't exist," I responded, laughing. "What makes a difference?" I hung up and blocked her after that. Although he cautioned that there would be criticism from extended family, my husband supported my choice. He was correct. Some family members contacted me and said that since family is family, I should be the bigger person and lend a hand. However, where was all of this concern when Karen and Rachel were treating me like trash? I disregarded them and refused to back down. I haven't replied, and to be honest, I don't intend to, but Karen left me a voicemail with the words, "If you can live with ruining your sister's wedding, then I guess you're not the person I thought you were. Too much of my life has been devoted to going above and beyond for folks who don't value it. I'm finished." I reached my breaking point after the wedding drama. In the house Dad left me, Karen and Rachel had been living rent-free for more than a decade. A part of me believed that especially after Dad's passing, it would be simpler to avoid the drama of evicting them. But as time went on, I came to see that they were not appreciative of me, did not respect me, and had no plans to ever be respectable. Let's go back a little. Karen and Rachel were furious that Dad left everything to me when his will was read. Karen said that because she had lived there for many years, it was her house. Rachel screamed about how unjust it was during her tantrum. In actuality though, Neither of them was worthy of a dime. When they couldn't even bother to come up most of the time, Dad left me the house because he could see how much I cared for him in his last months. I see you, and I appreciate you, was how he expressed his gratitude. I allowed them to remain in the house even after I inherited everything. I had the hope that they might change. However, Karen never once offered to pay me rent and instead rented out one of the rooms to pay for her own costs, acting as though the house was hers. I was treated like a villain by Rachel, who told the rest of the family that I had tricked Dad into excluding her from the will. They didn't try to patch things up between them. I finally came to the conclusion that enough was enough. I needed to reclaim what was properly mine since they had stayed too long. I was hoping you could help out with the expenses, she finally added. Considering everything your father left you, it's the least you can do. I was astounded. I don't even speak to Rachel, to start. Second, what level of entitlement is required to demand payment from someone who isn't even invited to the wedding? Indeed, Karen made it apparent that I was not invited. Oh, we assumed you wouldn't want to travel with a baby, but of course, you're welcome to come, Karen said in an attempt to retract her statement when I brought this up. Your sister is getting married, so you don't need an invitation. I bluntly told her no, I had nothing to pay for. She attempted to place the blame on me by claiming that I had an obligation to assist Rachel as the older sister. She also mentioned Dad's wealth, saying that while Rachel was struggling, I was hoarding the family fortune. I informed her that Rachel and I were not romantically involved and advised her to get in touch with Rachel directly if she needed assistance. Rachel, predictably, never did. Karen didn't accept rejection. She kept bringing up the same point in her voicemails and texts over the course of the following few weeks. I was disappointing Rachel, I was self-centered, and I didn't care about my family. If you don't help, it will ruin Rachel's big day and everyone will know it's your fault, she even stated. The problem is that Rachel and Karen behaved as though I owed them money. But when I needed assistance, where were they? I was the one who put everything on hold to take care of Dad while he was ill. While everybody continued living their lives, I was the one who remained by his side. And now they wanted me to come through and save the day after years of silence? Not at all. Karen made matters worse by asserting that Rachel had already reserved the space and paid deposits for musicians, caterers, and decorations. Since the invitations had already been sent, she claimed that canceling everything would make the family look foolish. If they couldn't afford it, how did they plan all of this? I asked her. What did she say? You were what we needed. That was the last straw. I informed Karen that because I wasn't providing them any money, she could solve the problem on her own. She broke down in tears and threatened to cut me out of her life if I didn't help. You already treated me like I didn't exist, I responded, laughing. What makes a difference? I hung up and blocked her after that. Although he cautioned that there would be criticism from extended family, my husband supported my choice. He was correct. Some family members contacted me and said that since family is family, I should be the bigger person and lend a hand. However, where was all of this concern when Karen and Rachel were treating me like trash? I disregarded them and refused to back down. I haven't replied, and to be honest, I don't intend to, but Karen left me a voicemail with the words, "If you can live with ruining your sister's wedding, then I guess you're not the person I thought you were. Too much of my life has been devoted to going above and beyond for folks who don't value it. I'm finished." I reached my breaking point after the wedding drama. In the house Dad left me, Karen and Rachel had been living rent-free for more than a decade. A part of me believed that especially after Dad's passing, it would be simpler to avoid the drama of evicting them. But as time went on, I came to see that they were not appreciative of me, did not respect me, and had no plans to ever be respectable. Let's go back a little. Karen and Rachel were furious that Dad left everything to me when his will was read. Karen said that because she had lived there for many years, it was her house. Rachel screamed about how unjust it was during her tantrum. In actuality, though, neither of them was worthy of a dime. When they couldn't even bother to come up most of the time, Dad left me the house because he could see how much I cared for him in his last months. I see you, and I appreciate you, was how he expressed his gratitude. I allowed them to remain in the house even after I inherited everything. I had the hope that they might change. However, Karen never once offered to pay me rent and instead rented out one of the rooms to pay for her own costs, acting as though the house was hers. I was treated like a villain by Rachel, who told the rest of the family that I had tricked Dad into excluding her from the will. They certainly enjoyed living in a house they didn't pay for, but they didn't try to patch things up. After Karen's absurd request that I cover Rachel's wedding costs and the constant attempts at manipulation, I finally had enough. I had an eviction notice prepared after I called my attorney. Karen went insane when she got it. "You can't evict me," she yelled when she called me. "I call this place home, I've spent 45 years here. I politely told her that she had 30 days to leave the house and that it was legally mine. Naturally, Rachel threw herself into the conflict. She accused me of being greedy and callous, calling me every possible insult in the book. I just cared about Dad to get the inheritance, she said. It was absurd. I'm the terrible guy, even though she was the one who hardly ever saw Dad while he was dying. Karen did everything she could to get me to reconsider. She pretended to be tough at first, adding, "I dare you to kick me out." She then softened, saying that the house was all she had left and that she was too old to start again. "I'm not going anywhere." As if it wasn't the place I should have been collecting rent on for years, she even sobbed about how she had been renting out a room to make ends meet. It didn't work. Her attempt to guilt-trip me by asking, "What would your dad think if he saw you throwing your mother out on the street?" was the last straw. "Dad left me the house for a reason," I explained to her. "Perhaps he would still be alive if you had given him even half the attention you gave to spa sessions." I realized that was harsh, but I had had enough of sugarcoating things. Karen had to deal with the repercussions of her decisions. The eviction wasn't warmly received by Rachel either. She made a huge deal out of telling Karen to temporarily move in with her. She boasted to every one of her relatives over the phone that she was supporting Karen and that she didn't require anything from me. She seemed to want a round of applause for performing the absolute minimum, and it was all very performative. On the 26th day of the 30-day notice period, Karen left. I didn't even make an effort to appear. To oversee the transition, I engaged a property manager. I had the house refurbished and cleaned after it was vacant. I made the trusting decision to rent it to the brother of a family friend. Knowing that the house would eventually be occupied by individuals who valued it was a pleasant feeling. In the meantime, because I wouldn't pay, Rachel's elaborate wedding plans fell through. She was forced to move from an elegant lakefront location to a municipal hall. It seems that this embarrassed a number of people in their social circle, and Rachel's fiancé wasn't pleased either. He didn't even want a large wedding, it turns out. Shortly after Karen moved in with Rachel, I began to hear rumors of trouble in paradise because Rachel had assured him she would find a way to pay for it, which was obviously code for "my sister will pay." Having his mother-in-law as a frequent visitor to the residence did not sit well with Rachel's husband. As usual, Karen felt compelled to interfere in their lives. She would make fun of Rachel's cooking, or remark on how Rachel's husband managed the house, and overall be a pain in the neck. Some family members have attempted to use guilt-tripping to get me to forgive Rachel and Karen. They insist that I should have allowed Karen to remain in the house and that I have gone too far. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. I don't care about these people's thoughts anymore because they remained silent when I was being tormented. Let's go on to the final update now. I believed that I would finally be at peace after Karen moved in with Rachel. I cut off most of the toxic relatives who tried to guilt-trip me into forgiving Karen and Rachel, rented out the house, and concentrated on my family. I must admit that I was relieved when I didn't hear from them for a time. Naturally, though, that didn't last. I received a contact from a mutual relative inquiring whether I had heard anything about Karen and Rachel's situation around 2 months after the eviction. I hadn't, and I wasn't sure I cared, to be honest. But I had to ask since I was so curious. They told me things that were both frustrating and, dare I say it, gratifying. Chris, Rachel's husband, apparently had enough of Karen's interference and issued Rachel a final ultimatum: either she leaves or I leave. Due to the wedding fiasco, Rachel was already at odds with him. Do you recall that she had promised him a lavish wedding, which I was supposed to pay for? Rachel felt ashamed in front of her friends and his family when they were forced to settle for a modest town hall ceremony when things didn't work out. There was a lot of friction in their relationship as a result of her disregarding Chris's warnings not to overextend financially. Things only got worse when Karen moved into their house. Chris's cuisine, his parenting skills, they have a toddler, and even his communication with Rachel were all criticized by Karen. Ironically, given her own financial mess, she would advise them on how to handle their money. For a while, Chris tried to put up with it, but after one very heated argument in which Karen accused him of not being man enough to care for his family, he told Rachel that it was either him or Karen. Rachel pleaded with him to change his mind, but he refused. The worst part is that Karen didn't go out in silence. She lost it when Rachel informed her of Chris's ultimatum. She also threatened to remove Rachel from her will, which was a pointless threat given that Karen had nothing to leave behind, and accused Rachel of abandoning her like everyone else. After they got into a heated dispute, Rachel, who was probably embarrassed and upset, advised Karen to work it out on her own. Where has Karen disappeared to? Not surprisingly, she made an attempt to get in touch with me. She asked me if I would think about allowing her to return to the house via email. Yes, an email, as I had blocked her on all other platforms. She wrote on how harsh life had been to her and how, As a mother, she had always tried her hardest. She even attempted to present it as a chance for us to mend and re-establish our bond. I didn't even think to answer. Her deceptive strategies were now just depressing. Karen attempted to use guilt tripping to persuade some extended family members to take her in after I failed to respond. The majority of them flatly refused, most likely due to their observation of her methods. A distant cousin consented to let Karen stay for a short while, but she was asked to leave after just 3 weeks. Evidently, the cousin had had enough of her persistent complaints and demanding demeanor. Rachel is currently coping with the consequences of her choices. Although Chris stayed with her, their relationship is apparently in very bad shape. Chris has been withdrawing both financially and emotionally as a result of the wedding costs, Karen's turmoil, and Rachel's inability to accept responsibility for anything. Rachel has been telling everyone that he, not her, is the issue, even though he even recommended couples counseling. According to what I've heard, Rachel has been complaining to her family about how unfair it is that Dad gave me everything. She said that none of this would have occurred if I had simply divided the inheritance. She intentionally omits the part where she and Karen treated me like a monster for caring about Dad and disregarded him in his last months. With them, it's always someone else's fault. I've been doing okay in spite of their turmoil. The best choice I've ever made was to lease out the house. The space is truly loved and respected by the renters, a lovely family. I now have financial stability and can invest in my daughter's future thanks to the rental income. My spouse and I are doing well in our jobs, and we have begun preparing for a long overdue family getaway. Regarding Karen and Rachel, they have already made their decisions and are now dealing with the fallout. Rachel is trapped in a marriage that is about to end, while Karen continues to move between relatives. I simply don't care about them anymore. I don't mean any harm. The most liberating thing of all has been realizing that their turmoil is no longer my problem. I appreciate you reading and all of your help along the process, Reddit. Thank you for everything, and be careful. My parents threw me out for my pregnant sister on my 18th birthday, but karma struck back spectacularly at her wedding. Allow me to illustrate the dynamics of my family for you. My name is Deborah, and I was born into a family who publicly called me their midlife mistake. My dad, Michael, 65 million, is a middle management who never challenges my mom, Karen, 63, who is a career-obsessed corporate juggernaut. Then there is my sister, Jennifer, 32F, who has never given a damn about me and is 14 years older than me. I was an unwanted surprise when I entered this world. When Mom found out she was pregnant at age 45, she initially assumed it was menopause. She desired an alternative answer, but by the time she met a doctor, it was too late. My arrival wasn't the consequence of a loving parental decision, based on what I've pieced together from overheard discussions and family whispers. I spent more time in the hospital than at home because I was born prematurely and had multiple health problems. Mom never paid much attention, constantly saying she had meetings that were too important to miss. Dad and my Aunt Rachel alternated in keeping an eye on me. Aunt Rachel has become the family's saint. Rachel was there, speaking encouragement through the incubator while my mother was probably closing deals. You're going to be just fine, little one. You're stronger than you know. I still think about those words when things get hard. Upon my eventual release from the hospital, my grandfather George took over once more. After determining that our home was insufficient for 2 children, he purchased a brand new 5-bedroom mansion with an enormous backyard in one of Boston's greatest neighborhoods. However, the emotional gap in that home could not be filled by any amount of wealth. The immaculate white carpeting, high-end furnishings, and carefully chosen artwork made growing up there feel like living in a museum. I knew right away that I wasn't a part of the display and was an unwanted artifact. When I was 5 years old, I have one of my best memories. On this Take Your Child to Work Day, my classmates were all thrilled to go to their parents' places of employment. Mom gave me a look that made me feel foolish when I asked if I could go with her. "Don't be ridiculous, Deborah," she yelled. I chose to spend the day with Aunt Rachel at her comfortable painting studio instead, saying, "I have important meetings all day. You'd just be in the way. Besides, the office isn't a place for children." She gave me permission to paint, displayed my creations on her walls, and gave me a sense of importance. My haven was school. In an effort to avoid returning home, I threw myself into my studies and joined as many clubs as I could. Such a quiet, well-behaved child, my teachers would say, praising me. They had no idea that I was afraid of being a burden at home, which is why I behaved well. Even during her brief holiday visits, Jennifer's lack of interest was evident, even though she was already enrolled in college when I entered elementary school. During the holidays, she would come in and tell me about her wonderful college experience, without mentioning me other than to gripe about how her old room had turned into my messy kid space. Grandpa George did his best to make up for my parents' lack of interest. Every few months, Dad would travel from Canada to visit, always bringing thoughtful presents like art supplies, books he knew I would enjoy, and other items that demonstrated his genuine interest in me. However, his presence was insufficient to address the underlying dysfunction in our family dynamic. In essence, Mom's approach to parenting was to spend money on issues and hope they would go away. Lessons in dance? Yes. Tutoring in private? In any case, attending my performance or parent-teacher conferences in person? Sorry, important meeting, can't reschedule. I received the same apathetic reaction for every accomplishment I made. That's nice, dear. Dad wasn't much better. Now please be quiet, I'm on a call. It turned out that his promise to Mom that he would assist her with me if she chose to have me was a hoax. He was never too tired, or too busy, to hang out with me. I once tallied how many times he used his favorite phrase, "Not now, Deborah," in a single weekend, 17 times. I can still recall my 10th birthday. Naturally, Mom and Dad forgot. Without even asking what I would desire, they hurriedly ordered a pricey cake and threw money at me when Aunt Rachel reminded them. Jennifer never gave a call. The only actual celebration took place the next day at Rachel's house, when she set up a small gathering with homemade cake and decorations that she knew I would adore. I became increasingly aware of the truth of my circumstances as I grew older. I pieced together the facts from bits and pieces of drunken confessions and whispered disputes that I shouldn't have overheard. When I was 12, I overheard my parents arguing about me one evening. Mom, who was likely drinking her third glass of wine, said, "She's just so demanding. Needing something, always wanting attention." I did not sign up for this. "How do you want me to handle this?" Dad retorted. "We can't really give her back." I began spending much more time at Aunt Rachel's after that. Her modest yet comfortable home became my actual residence. She would listen to my issues, help me with my homework, and teach me how to cook. All of the duties that parents are expected to perform. On the weekends, we would work on creative projects, bake cookies, or simply chat about life. She would inquire about my aspirations, anxieties, and future goals, things that my own parents never bothered to find out about. As the years passed, the gap between my life at home and my time with Rachel grew more pronounced. I was Debbie at Rachel's, loved, respected, and heard. I was Deborah at my parents' house, the misfit, the trouble, the unwelcome one. I discovered how to exist in these parallel universes, flipping between them like a television channel. Naturally, Grandpa George noticed. In order to guarantee that I would have assets of my own when I turned 18, Dad began making direct deposits into a private account on my behalf. With a knowing expression, he would say, "Just in case." I didn't realize at the time how prophetic those comments would turn out to be. The world can be unpredictable. It's interesting how life can throw you a curveball when you least expect it. When my parents dropped a bombshell on me, I was 18, counting down the days until I could leave for college, and struggling to get by each day in the emotional wasteland that was my home. "Deborah," Mom continued in a very upbeat tone, "we have amazing news. Jennifer, your sister, is pregnant and getting married. We're going to be grandparents," Dad added with a foolish smile. Wondering why they were telling me this as though I should be ecstatic, I forced a smile. "That's fantastic," I said. Mom went on, "We're going to be very busy preparing for the wedding," oblivious to my lack of excitement. Their eyes flitted to my bedroom door, and then all of a sudden everything fell into place. "Jennifer and her husband will need space for the baby when they move in with us after the wedding." It all made sense. The measuring tape I had seen in my room, the whispered discussions I had been overhearing, and their strange interest in my college aspirations. They were preparing for my departure as well as Jennifer's return. I realized that the upcoming weeks would be a game changer as I stood there and saw their faces light up at the thought of their real family getting together. I had no idea how drastically those changes would occur or how karma would soon make a big appearance in our family's drama. Update 1: How my parents officially erased me on my 18th birthday. Allow me to explain how my parents formally removed me from their lives on my 18th birthday. Aunt Rachel prepared her customary birthday pancakes and gave me the most considerate presents, including books, art tools, and a lovely handcrafted photo album of our times together. I spent the morning with her. Grandpa George was the true surprise. I initially assumed he was just being protective as usual, but now that I think about it, it seems like he knew something was coming. He had sent me the newest smartphone along with a letter that read, "Keep it handy and document anything important." When I got home to join in the celebration, he also requested me to participate in a live video call. I was unaware that I was going to document the proof that would make all the difference. I started the live video with Grandpa at noon and went home while talking to Aunt Rachel about my morning. Something didn't feel right when I opened the front door. There was an odd fragrance of fresh paint in the air, and the house was eerily quiet. My pulse began to race as I ascended the stairs to my room. Something was clearly off. I always left my door open, but now it was closed. I nearly dropped my phone in horror when I turned the handle. My room was no longer my own. After being covered in my photographs and artwork, the walls were recently painted a gentle shade of blue. An ornate white crib had taken the place of my bed. Teddy bears were all over the place, and where my desk had been, there was a rocking chair. To fit the nautical theme, even the curtains had been changed. I heard footsteps behind me at that moment. My parents were shocked to discover me filming as they came out of their bedroom. "Deborah," Mom said sternly. "Why are you in this place? Why are you taping too?" I was still processing the whole deletion of my existence, so I hardly paid attention to what she was saying. "My room. What happened to it? Where are all my belongings?" Dad nervously cleared his throat. "You see, Deborah, we've made the decision to give your sister's child this room. Because it has the most natural light, it's ideal for a nursery, and our first grandson deserves the best," he said. With a beaming passion that I had never seen directed at me, Mom interrupted, saying, "Jennifer is expecting a boy, the son your father has always desired." It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. "However, where should I sleep? Where are my belongings?" With a dismissive gesture toward the stairs, Dad remarked, "Oh, we packed up your stuff. The garage is where the boxes are. When you depart, you ought to bring them along." "Go," my voice broke. "Leave, what do you mean? I call this place home." Mom's phony grin wavered. "Deborah, you must comprehend, dear. There just isn't room for you here anymore, especially with Jennifer and her husband moving in and the baby on the way. Furthermore, you should learn how to support yourself now that you are 18. What I was hearing was unbelievable. "No," I murmured, my voice wavering. "No, I won't go. I also call this place home. You can't just ignore me like I don't exist." Mom finally lost her temper and said, "For heaven's sake, Deborah. Avoid being tough. This is about family, not about you." "I am a member of your family." Tears were flowing down my face as I yelled. "I am your daughter. My birthday is today, and you're throwing me out. Did you not even realize it was my birthday?" Dad rolled his eyes. "Is it your birthday? Is it the purpose of this outburst? We have no time for such nonsense." Their indifference struck me like a blow to the body. Mom looked anxiously at my phone, which was still filming everything, while I was crying. "Stop causing a commotion," she growled. "The neighbors will listen." "Well done," I fired back. "Give them permission. Make it clear to everyone your true character." Dad's fingers dug cruelly into my arm at that moment. He snarled, "That's enough," and pulled me to the stairs. "Leave right away and don't return." After a last shove, I was on the front porch with my stuff in hurriedly packed boxes. With a finality that reverberated in my bones, the door slammed behind me. I'm not sure how long I sat there crying, but Grandpa George's voice finally broke through my tears. "Are you there, Deborah, my love? I witnessed everything. Don't worry, we'll resolve this. For now, go to Rachel's, shall we? And be careful with the video." Having witnessed the entire event via Grandpa's shared live broadcast, Aunt Rachel was already waiting at her door when I got there. For the first time that day, I felt secure as she drew me into a strong embrace. Rachel insisted that my birthday be celebrated. She ordered my favorite meal, invited some of my closest friends over, and made every effort to make the day memorable. We all understood, however, that this was about more than just a botched birthday celebration. It was about my whole existence being completely upended. Grandpa George sent me an email that night when I was lying in bed in Rachel's guest room, which she started referring to as my room right away. He had a strategy, and his lawyer had saved and certified the live stream footage. He wrote, "The wedding is in 3 days. Be prepared. Karma occasionally requires a little assistance to get going." I didn't realize at the time how correct he was, or how spectacularly karma was about to hit. Update 2, Jennifer's wedding is the target of karma. Aunt Rachel demanded that we go to Jennifer's wedding even though we weren't invited. She helped me into a gorgeous blue frock she had purchased for the event and remarked, "We have every right to be there." Besides, we were specifically invited by Grandpa George. As soon as we walked into the reception area, I saw Grandpa. I felt uneasy since he was sitting at a table close to the front, looking sharp in his pricey suit. His exact plans were kept a secret from me, as he wanted to be prepared for some justice. As my parents had imagined, the ceremony itself was picture perfect. In her expensive gown, Jennifer looked stunning, and her new husband appeared to be a kind guy, although a little overwhelmed by the extravagance. Throughout the ceremony, Mom and Dad looked like the ideal family they had always envisioned, beaming with delight. As my parents worked the room throughout the reception, boasting about their expecting grandson and pregnant daughter, I observed from a corner table. They presumably hoped we wouldn't cause a commotion by deliberately placing us at the farthest table. If only they were aware of the impending danger. Grandpa George abruptly rose up during the celebratory supper as the congratulatory remarks got underway. The astonished best man handed over the microphone to him as he marched to the front of the room. There was silence in the room. He opened with the serene authority that only comes with age and wealth. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to disturb this happy occasion, but there is a serious injustice that must be addressed. I have never seen a takedown as deliciously vicious as the one that followed." Grandpa meticulously described every aspect, from my parents' early denial of my existence to their recent eviction on my birthday. On the projection screen in the reception area, he presented a few selected segments from the live feed, allowing everyone to see their actual hues in high definition. He roared, "These people threw their own daughter out like garbage on her 18th birthday to make room for their new grandson. Keep an eye on this." The film showed Dad's physical aggressiveness and Mom's contemptuous cruelty. The guests' faces shifted from bewilderment to surprise to indignation. In fact, a few of Mom's best friends stood up and left. As she watched, Jennifer's mascara trickled down her cheeks, making her new spouse appear more uneasy. Grandpa wasn't done when Mom, her face flushed, tried to intervene. His voice was as frigid as ice when he turned to face my parents. "Let me state this unequivocally, I am altering my will. I will give Rachel and Deborah every money I have. Jennifer, Karen, and Michael, you're all totally disconnected. The investment accounts, the trust monies, everything, disappeared." The outcome was instantaneous chaos. Mom cried out in a choked voice. Jennifer wept about the future of her unborn child as Dad's face became a frightening shade of purple. The biggest surprise, though, was when a number of Dad's business associates got up and walked away, pointing out their business cards to Grandpa as they went. As you can see, my parents were unaware, or had conveniently forgotten, that Grandpa was not only rich but also a significant investor in a number of businesses, including the one where Dad worked and many of Mom's most important clients. Grandpa had a significant impact on both their business and social networks. Mom's well-cultivated social circle started apologizing and departing as we watched. Suddenly, Dad's coworkers were unable to look him in the eye. Jennifer's in-laws appeared to be having a heated argument while gathered in a corner. When Jennifer's new husband got up and declared he needed some air, it was the last straw. He still hasn't returned. He is reportedly speaking with divorce attorneys because he doesn't want to be associated with a family that has such a well-publicized problem. The best thing, though, is this. Do you recall the business cards that people were giving to Grandpa? As it happens, a number of Dad's colleagues had been searching for fresh investment prospects. By the end of the evening, Mom's clientele was beginning to appear extremely slender, and Dad's business had lost 3 significant investors. Grandpa smiled at me contentedly as we walked out of the celebration. Letting people ruin themselves is sometimes the best kind of retaliation, my love. All I did was make sure their audience was appropriate. Since then, my parents have been bombarding my phone with frantic messages about understanding, forgiveness, and family. They even attempted to break into Rachel's house yesterday when they arrived. I made the decision that enough was enough at that point. After glancing at Rachel, I made the choice that would alter everything. "I want you to be my legal guardian," I replied. Our lawyer claimed it was almost a slam dunk with the video proof we had, and the paperwork was already underway. The reputation of Mom and Dad was in ruins. Their financial future appeared bleak, and they had been abandoned by their social group. At the time, Jennifer was residing with our parents. Her idyllic life was falling apart around her, and she was being shut out by her husband's family. As they say, karma is a wonderful thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to file for a restraining order. It should be an easy win because of the video proof of Dad's physical assault and their emotional abuse. If we wish to pursue a civil complaint, our attorney thinks we have sufficient funds for one as well. Grandpa George wasn't joking when he said that karma needed a little assistance occasionally, but it was worth every tear I ever shed because of my parents to see their meticulously maintained facade fall apart. Third update. I'm finally prepared to discuss how the wedding went, even though the effect has been utterly devastating. Karma did more than simply strike back. It composed a symphony of justice that would make any fan of vengeance cry with delight. Let's begin with the court case. Only 2 weeks after the disastrous wedding, the court hearing for Rachel's guardianship and my restraining order was set. My parents appeared in their most favored role, that of loving, worried parents who only wanted their daughter back. They had even engaged a public relations consultant to assist them develop their image, giving them advice on how to come out as contrite. The sight in the courtroom was unreal. In contrast to her typical power suits, Mom dressed her best concerned mother attire, complete with natural makeup and modest jewelry. In fact, Dad had a new haircut and, of all things, a Bible with him. They had even brought in character witnesses, mainly well-off friends, who were prepared to attest to their commitment as parents. They weren't ready for what we had though. In addition to the birthday video, our lawyer provided years' worth of financial documents that demonstrated how they had misappropriated the assistance funds that Grandpa had been sending for my upbringing. As it turned out, they had been transferring the majority of it, more than $200,000, to their personal investment accounts and Jennifer's trust fund. I will never forget the judge's expression as the footage was being played again. She even halted the proceedings to inquire if I wanted to file criminal charges when it reached the point when Dad physically pulled me out. I refused. It was enough torture to watch their world fall apart. She was adamant, nonetheless, about sending the case to the district attorney's office for examination. For my parents, the judge's decision was terrible. In addition to being given full guardianship, they were mandated to reimburse Rachel for all of the money that had been embezzled from her support, plus interest. They must keep at least 500 feet away from Rachel and myself, according to the restraining order that was granted. However, that was only the start of their demise. Do you recall the wedding's business contacts? They were rushing, not simply walking away. After a number of investors left, Dad's company carried out an internal audit, which revealed several dubious choices he had made. He was relegated to a role with little actual authority or client contact, but he wasn't dismissed outright. Interns now share a cubicle with the man who once held the corner office. Even more spectacularly, Mom's career collapsed. Her once advantageous reputation as a brutal businesswoman was now viewed differently. Clients canceled contracts citing ethical concerns when the video of her ruthlessly evicting her own daughter went viral in local business circles. She now reports to someone who was once her junior associate after her corner office was moved to a cubicle 3 floors down. The social repercussions were just as disastrous. Following a particularly contentious board meeting where the video was aired, their membership in the country club was canceled. To get away from them, old friends crossed the street. Their names inexplicably disappeared off the donor wall when their church requested that they take a break from committee work. In little than a month, the meticulously crafted social standing they had spent decades cultivating fell apart. Things haven't gotten much better for Jennifer. 2 weeks after the wedding, her husband filed for divorce, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of family character. She continues to live with our parents, using department store maternity clothes in place of her fashionable pregnancy outfit. My former room, the nursery they so brutally evicted me for, is now empty and underused, while her ideal suburban dream has degraded into sharing her old adolescent bedroom with her expectant child. The impact on finances has been enormous. Grandpa George wasn't threatening the will in a meaningless way. He essentially moved the majority of his assets out of my parents' grasp by having his attorneys create an irrevocable trust for Rachel and me. They have now received eviction papers from the house they reside in, which is officially held by one of Grandpa's businesses. While the investigation into the stolen support monies is ongoing, their investment portfolio has been placed on hold. They made every effort to turn things around, including offering treatment, making heartfelt apologies, and even trying to buy Rachel's neighbors to spy on us. They sent their lawyer to negotiate last week, seemingly ready to forgive me if I could persuade Grandpa to restore their inheritance. It was almost impressive how bold they were. For my part, things has taken a surprisingly positive turn. In what is now officially my permanent residence, Rachel and I share a home. We've painted my room in my favorite colors, hung my artwork, and made it genuinely so it's no longer just a guest room. Rachel even assisted me in creating a fairy light-equipped reading nook near the window. I feel like I have a true home for the first time in my life. Grandpa George established a substantial college fund, and I've received acceptance offers for the next autumn semester from multiple universities. I'm going to study psychology with a focus on family trauma therapy because, well, I might as well apply my life experience. I've already begun assisting other teenagers from toxic homes deal with their circumstances by working at a nearby youth shelter. The amount of support I've received has been tremendous. It seems that many people in similar circumstances found resonance in my narrative. I've started a blog to chronicle my healing process, join support groups, and gain new friends that can relate to what I've been through. The texts I get every day from people going through similar things give me hope that all of this suffering can lead to something positive. Yesterday, my parents' most recent attempt to get in touch was a formal letter from their lawyer threatening to sue me for defamation if I don't take back my false accusations. Our lawyer actually chuckled when he read it, But he also reminded them that we have everything on video and that the truth is an absolute defense against defamation. As I reflect on the last 3 months, I've come to the essential realization that sometimes the family you were born into isn't the one you were intended to be with. I learned what unconditional, encouraging, and respectful family love looks like from Rachel and Grandpa George. They have only ever asked for my pleasure and well-being in exchange. To everyone who helped me along the way, you have no idea how much your messages, counsel, and experiences have aided me. The Reddit community turned out to be a surprising wellspring of knowledge and courage. You showed me that standing up for myself wasn't selfish and that I wasn't wrong to ask my parents to have basic human decency. There is hope for people who are still stuck in unhealthy familial environments. Create a support system, keep track of everything, and never forget that you deserve better. Being related by blood does not give someone the right to mistreat you. Those who don't love you well don't define your value. I've legally changed my identity, I have a real home, and I can finally control my future when I start college in the fall. Karma rolls hard, but occasionally it needs a little prodding. I'm sure my folks are reading this, so I hope it was worthwhile. You lost the daughter you never cared to adore as well as everything else because of your ideal family image. Reddit, I appreciate you sharing in my path to liberation. Am I the asshole for refusing to give my $75,000 restaurant savings to my sister's Ivy League dreams and getting kicked out? To open my own tiny restaurant, I, a 25-year-old, had been saving for years. My dream has always been to start my own restaurant and work as a chef. I worked toward this objective with every cent I made from both full-time and part-time jobs after graduation. I saved $75,000 after working hard and living frugally for 7 years. Although they were aware of my dream, my parents dismissed it as a passing fad. In order to save money on rent, I moved in with them, which accelerated my goal-achieving process. I should have moved out sooner, looking back. The golden child is my younger sister, who is 19F. She is my parents' clear favorite and is excellent at everything. They never failed to make comparisons between us, elevating her while ignoring me. My sister was accepted to an Ivy League university last month to pursue a master's degree. Although my parents were overjoyed, the living expenses and tuition significantly outstripped their expectations. They convened a family meeting one evening. I assumed it was to talk about my sister's acceptance, but instead they wanted me to donate all of the money I made from my business to her schooling. I was taken aback. As though anticipating this, my sister sat there smugly. My parents were waiting for me to agree as they gave me an eager gaze. When I was hesitant, my mother started stressing the value of education and the fact that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Family comes first, according to my dad, and I should encourage her to pursue her goals. It was unbelievable to me. What about the years I'd spent working hard and my dreams? I explained how much the money meant to me and how close I was to reaching my goal when I informed them I couldn't. Their attitude changed instantly. My mother broke down in tears and accused me of being self-centered. When my dad raged that I was betraying the family and that he had always been envious of my sister's success, his face flushed crimson with rage. My sister didn't state that she didn't want my money or even defend me. She obviously felt entitled to it. The dispute swiftly got out of hand. I was guilt-tripped by my parents, who said that allowing me to live rent-free was a great favor because they had given up everything for us. Conveniently, they disregarded the housework and upkeep I had performed while I was residing there. I remained steadfast, declaring that although I loved my sister and wanted her to succeed, I couldn't let go of my own goals. Like other students, I advised her to take out student loans or postpone for a year in order to save money. Outrage erupted in response to this suggestion. For even implying that my sister should have to struggle or postpone her education, my mother accused me of being callous. According to my father, I should be the older brother and take care of my sister because taking out loans was too risky. The dispute continued for hours. It always got worse when I believed it couldn't. Every error I had ever committed and every flaw my parents saw in me was brought up. They often made negative comparisons between me and my sister. It felt like long-suppressed animosity was being let go. At last, my father threatened to throw me out of the house if I didn't give my sister the money. He offered me a day to choose between packing my things and turning over my funds. I was taken aback. It was unbelievable to me that they would progress thus far. A larger part of me understood that if I gave in now, I would be bitter against them for the rest of my life, but a smaller part of me wanted to give in to maintain harmony and avoid losing my family. Along with my money, I would also have to give up my goals and my sense of self-worth. That night, I tossed and turned, considering my possibilities. I had made up my mind by dawn. I got to work packing. My parents looked surprised when they saw me. I suppose they genuinely thought I would comply with their requests. My mom tried one more time to get me to change my decision while I was packing my car. She warned me that I would always regret this and that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. My dad's expression was a mask of despair and rage as he stared from the window. At last, my sister spoke up, but not to support me. She accused me of being self-centered and claimed that she was always aware of my lack of concern for her. I did care for her in spite of everything, but I couldn't burn myself alive to keep her warm, so her comments hurt more than my parents. I had a range of feelings as I drove away from the house where I grew up, including fear, sadness, and rage, but I also felt relieved. I had the impression that a burden had been removed. I had defended myself against my family's irrational expectations for the first time in my life. The initial days were difficult. While I searched for an apartment, I stayed with a friend. My folks bombarded my phone with messages that alternated between violent outbursts and guilt trips. For my own peace of mind, I banned their phone numbers. When word spread around the extended family, opinions diverged. Some family members backed me up, claiming my parents were being irrational. Others accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered, siding with my parents. It was a complete disaster. I put myself into my restaurant plans after finding a tiny place. It was thrilling and challenging, especially without the network of support I believed I had. I had complete power over my life and my choices for the first time. Months passed. According to rumors, my sister had chosen to postpone entrance for a year in order to work and accumulate savings. I was unhappy that it had come to this, but I also felt somewhat justified. A few times, my parents tried to get back together, but only if I continued to pay my sister the money. I remained steadfast in my choice. Our relationship was still tense and aloof. 6 months later, I'm almost done negotiating a lease for a tiny restaurant location. It's a beginning, but not much. I am reminded that I made the proper decision with each step I take toward realizing my ambition. However, doubts do arise. As the day's thrill wanes late at night, I question whether I made the correct decision. Was I being self-centered, really? Was it right of me to give up something for my sister? Was my decision to shut off communication with my family an overreaction? I am aware of my parents' poisonous and deceptive actions. My sister was acting entitled, and I know it. Despite everything, I still miss them since they are my family. I can't help but question whether there was a more effective approach to deal with the circumstance. Reddit, did I make a mistake by refusing to part with my savings? Was it right of me to maintain my ground and follow my aspirations even if it meant sacrificing my ties with my family, or should I have found a medium ground? Edit 1. This really took off overnight. I appreciate all of your feedback and encouragement. I'll attempt to answer some frequently asked questions and offer some background. My sister has always been given preference by my parents, but it has never been this obvious. In retrospect, I can see that they consistently expected me to make minor sacrifices for her. Our parents' money plus a scholarship my sister received helped to cover the cost of her undergraduate studies. They didn't have enough saved because this master's program was unexpected. Some inquired about my sister's employment opportunities. Although her field of study has significant career potential, this is not a given. It appears that my parents believe this degree will help her in the future. Cultural expectations were brought up in a few remarks. Although not to this extent, it is typical in our culture for elder siblings to assist younger ones. My parents went too far, according to the majority of my cousins. If you're wondering why I didn't move out sooner, the answer is that I was attempting to save money, and living with parents till marriage is common in our culture. I now see how much power this gave my parents over me. Some said that in order to maintain harmony, I ought to have made a lower offer. My parents made it clear that it was all or nothing. They wanted the entire $75,000, but I gave it some thought. For those who are interested in the restaurant, it will be a small establishment that specializes in fusion cuisine, which blends flavors from the area with aspects of our cultural heritage. It's thrilling but frightening. Many people want to know if I keep in touch with my sister. I've made several attempts to contact her, but she either ignores me or replies with brief, uninteresting texts. I believe she accuses me of sabotaging her scheme. On the remarks on my parents' financial status, they are not having financial difficulties. They live comfortably and work well. They simply didn't want to take money out of their own retirement or savings accounts. Family therapy was recommended by some. I believe we all need space right now, but I'm open to it in the future. My parents have yet to admit that their desire was irrational. Again, I want to thank everyone for their support and insights. Hearing your viewpoints and sharing this tale has been healing. I'll keep you informed on the restaurant's progress. Edit 2. Since there is still interest in this post, here is another update. I've given the remarks that I should attempt to patch things up with my sister apart from my parents a lot of thought. Yes, she is young and may yet be influenced by them. I made the decision to get in touch with her once more, this time sending a longer email outlining my position. I was surprised when she answered. She wrote a confused and angry email. She acknowledged that she was conflicted about how our parents were handling it and wanted the chance I was denying her. She did, however, agree to meet next week to discuss the matter face to face. Regarding the restaurant, everything are moving along nicely. I completed the lease and got the improvements underway. Although it requires a lot of work, my confidence in my choice grows every day. A number of my friends have volunteered, and I am so grateful for their support. Since my last update, my parents have not gotten in touch. According to a cousin, they are informing relatives that I have left them. Even though it hurts, I'm making an effort to concentrate on the good things in my life at the moment. Some of you recommended that I write my parents a thorough letter outlining my thoughts and feelings. After the restaurant opens, I believe I'll do that. I need to put all of my attention into realizing this dream right now. Again, I want to thank you all for your help and guidance. It has been immensely beneficial throughout this challenging period. Update. I wanted to discuss what has transpired since my last post, which was nearly a year ago. Everything has changed, and I'm still getting used to it. The first piece of good news is that my restaurant is now open. It has now been open for around 4 months. It's tiny, like I always intended, and has a welcoming ambiance with a cuisine that blends regional flavors with traditional foods from our culture. Although the initial weeks were quite hectic, things have begun to settle down. Although we haven't made a lot of money yet, we are breaking even and gaining a devoted clientele. I've even been able to hire a dishwasher, a part-time server, and 2 line cooks. Every minute feels worthwhile, even though I've been working non-stop, often 14-hour days. I'm living out my dream right now. My friends and my few remaining family members' support has been crucial. Now for the unexpected turn of events. I heard the bell over the door ring yesterday while I was getting ready for the dinner service. After I announced that we weren't yet open, I heard a voice I recognized say, "I'm not here as a customer." My sister was the one. She appeared more worn out and less put together than I had recalled. We simply stared at one another for a while, unsure of what to say. The stillness was finally broken by her. She said, "I need a job," in a timid and low voice. "I was wondering if you had any openings." I was taken aback. The last thing I anticipated was this. For the first time in months, we had a conversation when I encouraged her to sit down. As it happened, her life had not gone as planned. Finding a job in her profession proved more difficult than she had expected, especially without the master's degree she had been banking on. She had postponed her enrollment to the Ivy League institution, hoping to work for a year and save money. She informed me that our parents were still upset with me. They accused me of sabotaging her opportunity to receive a prestigious degree. To pay for her education, they had been pressuring her to acquire a well-paying job, but she was starting to feel the effects of the strain. Unable to cope with their continual disappointment, she had left their home a month ago. I could see how much she had changed as she spoke. The haughtiness had vanished, and in its place came a humility I had never witnessed in her. She expressed regret for not defending me that day and acknowledged that she had been mistaken to feel entitled to my money. To be honest, I was a little depressed. We were sad about the time we had lost. I was saddened by the way our family had disintegrated. I promised to give the job some thought and get back to her. I'm conflicted now. On the one hand, her previous behavior still hurts me, and I'm concerned that hiring her could cause new issues or reopen old ones. However, she is requesting assistance, and she is my sister. For the hectic weekend shifts, I could also use an additional server. I have not yet made up my mind. I can't help but think what my parents would say if they found out she had turned to me for support. I question whether this is an opportunity to begin mending our relationship or if it's a recipe for catastrophe. So, Reddit, I'm in need of your counsel once more. Do I need to hire my sister? After everything that has transpired, is it prudent to combine family and business? Should I advise her to search elsewhere instead? I never imagined myself in this situation, deciding on my sister's destiny. I suppose life has a way of taking you by surprise. Any opinions or suggestions would be greatly valued. Last update. A few weeks have passed since my last post, and I've come to a decision I never would have imagined. I've made the decision to assist in paying for my sister's schooling after giving it some serious thought and having several lengthy discussions with her. I understand that considering all that has transpired thus far, this may come as a surprise, but listen to me. We began communicating more frequently after my sister arrived and asked for a job. I knew it would be very difficult to combine family and business at this time, so I didn't hire her at the restaurant. However, I saw from our chats how much she had developed and evolved over the previous 12 months. She acknowledged that she had been entitled and self-centered during the family argument and expressed regret for her actions. She informed me that the previous year had served as a wake-up call for her. Her struggle to make ends meet while working minimum wage jobs had changed her outlook on the importance of hard effort and money. Her statement that she now realized why my restaurant idea meant so much to me was what truly got to me. She had never before respected the amount of labor I had put into making it a reality. I also discovered that our parents continued to put pressure on her to pay for her education, making her feel inadequate for not being able to do it on her own. It brought back memories of the years I spent feeling below their standards. I gave it a lot of thinking before deciding. I assured her that I would cover half of her next year's tuition. Although it's not the entire sum my parents had previously requested, it's still a sizable donation that would enable her to begin her master's program without being deeply indebted. What made me choose to do this? I didn't do it because I felt guilty or obligated to. It's because I witnessed my sister's real transformation. I noticed someone who was making an effort to improve herself after learning some difficult lessons. In the end, I came to the realization that I did want to assist her, if I could, not at the expense of my own goals, but in a way that seemed right to me. I can now afford this without putting my restaurant's operations at risk because it is doing well enough. Being able to assist on my own terms is a pleasant feeling. When I told my sister, she became quite emotional. She sobbed and gave me a hug, saying she would work part-time to pay for her living expenses and that she would reimburse me eventually. I advised her to take full advantage of this chance as the greatest way to repay me. Our parents haven't been informed yet. Although I have no idea how they will respond, I am certain that my choice will remain the same regardless of the outcome. My sister and I are the only ones involved. I'm content with this decision. It feels right, even if it's not what I expected. Life occasionally offers you the opportunity to change how your narrative ends. I own this. My mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom during labor to stop me from stealing the spotlight at her daughter's wedding. I woke up in the hospital later. 2 weeks ago, my husband Richard, Rick M30, and I, F29, welcomed a daughter into the world. We are certainly thrilled to have our first child. Our lives have been extremely hectic as we get used to being parents. We're doing our best, but it's a difficult shift for us both. Due to the events surrounding the birth of our daughter May, we are not really able to get much assistance. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it because it was one of the most horrific events in my life. I can't get over the crippling fear I experienced that day, not even the joy of May's birth. Without my husband's prompt assistance, I believe I would have passed away. Since May is the family's eldest child, I believe that we should be a little kinder to them despite the terrible incident. But I'm not sure, and all these hormones and infant responsibilities are impairing my judgment. I've gone to Reddit for assistance because of this. Please be patient with me since this narrative may be lengthy and feature many characters. Rick's sisters are Emma and Anna. At 28 and 24, respectively, they are both younger than him. I think there is no hostility between us, and I get along well with both of them. Due to our hectic work schedules and infrequent meetings, we are not particularly close. Emma doesn't even reside in the same city as us, but we still make an effort to stay in touch by calling or texting her occasionally. My mother-in-law, Rachel, F53, is another significant figure in Rick's family and in this narrative. I get along well with Anna and Emma, but Rachel is a very different matter. I don't precisely agree with Rachel. I genuinely believe that she has an issue with everyone, not just myself. She simply never stops being the biggest control freak you can think of. Rachel wants everything to happen the way she wants it to. Since she was the one who reared her children after their father abandoned them, all three of them generally respect her desires. They make an effort to simplify their own lives. She does, however, react if someone tries to desire something different from what she desires. From dissatisfaction and moping to a full-blown meltdown with tears and tantrums, the response might vary widely. I try to avoid her as much as I can since it gets hard to cope with her. Rick is aware of this. He allows me to keep my distance and handle his mother however I see fit because he knows she is problematic. I let it go because, despite her domineering behavior, I can relate to how he feels about her. She doesn't interfere in my life because she doesn't like me, which is good for everyone. But a few days earlier, she was solely to blame for things being out of control. Nobody can ever forgive her, in my opinion. Anna was getting married the day May was born. Her husband Jonah, M30, is actually Rick's friend, and the wedding was beautiful. About a year ago, he asked her to marry him. I had agreed to be a bridesmaid when Anna asked me to. But I knew I couldn't handle that, So when Rick and I learned I was expecting, I had to ask her to ask someone else. There were just 6 months left before the wedding, nearly 6 months after the proposal. I was 3 months pregnant at the time, and I knew I had to put my priorities first. I had anticipated criticism from Anna for abandoning me in the middle. Before I told her, I was twitchy and really anxious. I was relieved and surprised that our connection would not be permanently impaired, as I had expected. When I informed Anna, she was ecstatic. When I told her that I wouldn't be available for tasks, she actually forgot about her wedding for a bit. Her answer was to concentrate on looking after me. In order to avoid me missing the wedding, which I would have if May had been born at that time, she even thought about moving it. For a variety of circumstances, that ultimately didn't occur, and to be honest, she shouldn't have done it in the first place. Even though it ended up being a near call, she remained there for me the entire time. I didn't bother the two sisters much during my pregnancy, which was terrifying for me, because Emma was the maid of honor and I knew they were busy getting ready for the wedding. They both came over, helped me a lot, and kept in touch as much as they could. Although Anna stood by me the entire time, I feel a little bad for not being there for her on the most significant day of her life. My mother-in-law was the only one who seemed a little angry about the whole situation. The wedding preparations were somewhat disrupted, and I believe she was irritated that I could no longer serve as the maid of honor. I could see where she was coming from, and that looked like the only sensible explanation. But even after Anna was comfortable with the pregnancy and my not being the maid of honor, the animosity, for want of a better term, persisted. Even though the bride wasn't angry at all, Rachel somehow began to irritate me after that. It was strange, but I reasoned that perhaps she was nervous due to the wedding, and I was tense due to hormones. I persuaded myself that this was merely fabricating stories in my mind. I did my best to ignore her, and everything was good. During the wedding, everything literally and figuratively went out of control. When it happened 2 weeks ago, I was insanely pregnant. My belly was enormous, my feet were bloated, and I thought I may faint. Nevertheless, Anna wanted me to be at the wedding, so I wanted to go. I wanted it to be her day, so I had asked her whether she wanted me to be there in advance. I informed her that I didn't want the attention to be diverted from her by the appearance of a hugely pregnant woman. The bride and groom should enjoy their wedding days, and I would hate to be the one to ruin that. Anna was genuinely insulted and saddened when I told her this. She stated she couldn't believe I wouldn't go to her wedding and instead fill my mind with this pointless concept. She claimed that all she wanted was for her family to be present to support her on her wedding day and that she didn't care about fame or attention. She urged me not to worry about drama and that I had to come. She meant it, and I knew it. She doesn't hold back when speaking. She would have told me straight out if she didn't want me there. However, she did, and with great vigor. I felt that I had a responsibility to support her. Therefore, I knew I had to be there for her on her wedding day despite my physical discomfort. I'll be honest. I tried my best to ignore the many mumbling voices because I knew Anna was glad I was there. For me, that was all that mattered at the time. Rachel glared at me the entire time and didn't say much to me. However, I was too uneasy to pay attention or notice. I simply left her alone because I lacked the energy to confront her or explain her passive-aggressive actions. I wasn't going to respond to her, so she could glare all she wanted. Then came the major event that deeply stunned and damaged everyone around me, including myself. Just before the ceremony started, I started to feel apprehensive. Since I had previously met Anna, I decided to go upstairs in the hopes of feeling better and would come back afterward. I was unaware that Rachel was following me. I went to the bathroom because I felt strange and sweaty. My water suddenly broke. It was a real flood, and I began to panic because, despite my deepest love for my daughter, she had arrived at the worst possible time. I was unable to think clearly. Fortunately, my mother-in-law was in front of me. I was crouched in agony by then. We had to hurry to the hospital, so I instructed her to grab my phone and call Rick right away as she hurried up to me. I handed her my phone as she helped me up and forced me to sit in the restroom. She lost it at that point. Because she didn't want me to take Anna's attention away from her, she promised to make sure Rick arrived an hour after the ceremony ended. I told her that I couldn't possibly tolerate this for an hour and asked if she was crazy. I attempted to grab my phone from her, but she took it with her and locked me inside. There I was, sitting on a toilet in a restroom, practically on the verge of giving birth, without a spouse or a phone. I'm not sure how I avoided having a full-blown panic attack, but I'm glad I didn't because I'm not sure what might have occurred if I had. I stood up, walked slowly over to the door, and began hammering on it. I kept screaming, but nobody could hear me because the restrooms were on the first floor and everyone was already seated for the wedding. I yelled until I could no longer be heard, but nobody arrived. I honestly thought I was going to die at that point and take my child with me. I had lost my voice, was soaked, sweating profusely, and was fatigued. I don't recall anything else after that. I'm not sure what transpired after I fainted from tiredness. I know I went to the hospital, but I can't even recall how I got there. A few hours later, I woke up in the hospital, sobbing with Rick at my side. It took me a few moments to figure out where I was and what was going on. I thought the worst when I noticed Rick crying. I assumed May didn't make it, and everything came rushing back, including Rachel shutting me in the bathroom and my tears. Rick let out a sigh of relief and began sobbing in my arms as soon as he realized I was awake. I felt sick to my stomach and was unsure of how to interpret it. Then, with a breath of relief, I saw the nurse enter carrying a baby girl. Since Rick was playing me like that, I really wanted to slap him, but he insisted he wasn't. I was unconscious when he found me in the bathroom, so he was just glad I was all right. When I held my kid for the first time, I think I will always remember that moment. There isn't a better feeling in life, in my opinion. There is nothing that can ever compare to how I felt at those times. Since I didn't have the energy to cope with it at that point, I'm glad Rick didn't give me any details. I asked him what was going on because I could hear some noise outside. Rachel wanted to come in and see her granddaughter, he added. I explained everything that had transpired to him. I explained to him what she had done and how she had needlessly put our daughter in risk. I also informed him that I would never again permit her to be close to my daughter. She was dead to me. Rick claimed to be an expert. Rachel sobbed and told him everything when he found me in that way. I informed him that I would not forgive her simply because she had a breakdown. He chuckled and declared that he would file charges for life endangerment and that his mother was dead to him from now on. He promised to take legal action to ensure she was held accountable for her actions. His words made me feel as though a burden had been removed from my shoulders. All three of them adore their mother, and I know he does, but I wasn't in the mood to forgive her after the stunt she pulled that might have killed me and my daughter. Our marriage would have ended if Rick had picked her over me. After that, there would have been no turning back. I secretly hoped that he would pick his mother, who had done a great deal to raise children in spite of everything. I'm not complaining at all, even though I may not have expected him to defend me in that manner. In fact, if it's possible, it has increased my affection for him. He told me the wedding went well when I asked how it went. In order to come see us, Emma and Anna were waiting for him to call. He laughed when I inquired if Anna was upset, telling me that I didn't need to be concerned about her at all. She has been beaming with happiness and pride, saying that May's birth was the greatest gift she could have had and that her entire family attended the wedding. When he told me that, I was crying and begged him to call them right away. Jonah, Emma, and Anna joined me at the hospital in a matter of minutes. The greatest part was that Jonah and Anna were still dressed for their wedding, and Anna declared that she couldn't resist the opportunity to snap a wedding photo with her niece. It was such a touching moment that I burst into tears. I apologized to Anna for spoiling her day after the photo. She gave me a hug and told me that I was seeing things incorrectly because I had brightened her day. The only thing I did wrong, according to Anna, was not alerting them sooner. I informed her about my mother-in-law's actions ever since we announced the pregnancy. They could have stopped her drama, she thought. When I told Anna that I didn't want to start any problems, Emma added that as long as I was safe, any mischief was okay. When I realized they loved me like family, I started crying even as I typed this. To them, I was more than simply Rick's wife, I was family. One of the greatest women I've ever met is Anna. It's no surprise that she is where she is now because she is so content and safe. How Rachel is so different from her kids is beyond me. They seem to have recognized that she wasn't what they wanted to be after seeing her. Anna had told Rachel on her way in that she would see to it that Rick and I filed charges, but apparently Rachel was still outside. I didn't want Emil close to me, but she wanted to come in and meet May. We must protect ourselves from her, Anna remarked. She felt she hadn't addressed her mother's overprotective tendencies or made it apparent that she didn't mind my pregnancy, so she apologized to me. Perhaps the situation could have been prevented if she had, she claimed. I assured her that she was not at fault because she had given me a sense of security. Rick was outside conversing with Mil the entire time. 2 to 3 days after my discharge, Rick informed me what he and Mil had discussed when I returned home with May. He said that nothing would alter his decision to bring charges, which he had already told her he would do. He also informed her that she would never be permitted to be in May's life. In every way, she was not her grandma. Rick clarified that she had decided to endanger both our unborn child's and my lives over a perceived offense that didn't even bother her. Additionally, he informed her that the entire amount of money she had been relying on from Rick and Emma would be drastically cut. She broke down in tears and claimed she didn't deserve this as she had dedicated her entire life to raising her children. Rick informed her that although he was grateful for everything she had done for them, It did not provide her authority over their life. He said that she was at fault and that he had been putting up with or overlooking everything she did for years, but that he was done. She had gone too far and demonstrated that she was unsafe to be around when it came to May and me. Her reasoning didn't hold water, especially since Anna and I never had an issue together. As a mother, Rachel acknowledged that Anna hadn't intended for me to take center stage. When Anna heard this, she attacked her. "We are definitely moving on with the case, but Rick will take care of it because I can't handle this turmoil and I have a newborn to look after." "I'll take care of it," Rick responded. The siblings no longer want to speak with her. Rick and I clearly don't communicate with her. Emma only speaks to her when it's absolutely necessary, and Anna has shut her off completely. Mil probably didn't expect this. Despite how twisted that seems, it's possible that she truly believed she was protecting Anna. Even though I have no intention of defending her, I still feel sorry for her because everything went so wrong. It feels wrong and bad to me now, and I'm wondering if they should speak it out with her. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly, but I'm not sure. I'm certain that Rick will lose it if I bring this up to him. He can't even look at her at the moment since he is so mad with her. This isn't what I expected, yet here we are. Update: reconciliation is permanently out of the question. I realize I haven't posted in a while, but I've been busy taking care of myself and my child as a new mother. Fortunately, May will be 8 weeks old in a few days, and we are all quite happy about it. Jonah and Anna have been tremendously helpful to Rick and myself. Emma calls nearly every day, but she had to return to work. Everyone's eyes are actually brightened by May. They swoon over her, and her photos are all over the group chat. Mil has not been contacted. I persuaded Rick that filing charges would be pointless because we already had too much on our plate. Since neither of us had the energy for anything else, Rick reluctantly consented. Last week, Emil seemed appreciative when we told her. I use the word appeared, since last week the woman, who is truly insane, revealed her actual nature to everyone. Rick and I awoke to a loud knock on the door at around 1 in the morning. Rick went to open the door, but I fled and hid with May because I assumed it was a robbery. I heard shouting, but I was afraid to venture out for fear of waking May. As it happened, it was Mil. According to Rick, she was acting irrationally, yelling that we couldn't keep her away and that she needed to see May. Before she left, Rick had to threaten her with the cops. She was attempting to break in. Since everyone needed to know if something was wrong with her, we informed Anna and Emma right away. She texted us unsettlingly the following day. She began by claiming that we were punishing her because her sole transgression was becoming a mother and that we were being cruel and horrible to her by denying her access to May. Her text eventually became more disorganized, but there was still more melodramatic rubbish in it. She claimed that parenting 3 children was a burden and that she was constantly balancing the needs of one child over those of the others. She said that because she didn't want May to ruin Anna's birthday, she felt compelled to do that on May's birthday. Conveniently, she failed to remember that May was actually a fetus, and Anna had repeatedly stated that she had no problem with the pregnancy and wedding taking place simultaneously. This part made sense to me, but what she said next startled me. She acknowledged that she was concerned she wouldn't be as significant to her children now that May was in our life. She assumed Anna would be upset when I told her I was pregnant since that's how a normal woman would feel. She didn't like it though, when she realized that we were all thrilled about the wedding and the pregnancy. In essence, she expressed her disapproval of the fact that we were all content with one another and with each other. She wanted us to be competitive and envious. She admitted that she hoped Anna would be upset with us when she realized the due date would be close to the wedding, so that May wouldn't steal the show. However, that did not occur. May was the only topic of conversation. She claimed that the fact that an unborn child had replaced her as the siblings' unifying element made her feel degraded. She kept sending texts like this, and when I requested Rick to block her, she was still typing. I informed him that she was dangerous for May and us all since she was insane. Since seeing those messages, I've been suffering from a persistent headache. It's unbelievable that a woman in her 50s is competing against a 7-week-old child. I'm done with her, therefore it doesn't make sense to me and doesn't have to. I'm done defending her actions and attempting to figure out why she did them. I don't care if she ends up in hell. Anna and Emma were also distressed when we forwarded the messages to them. They believe she may be experiencing a manic episode. Emma promised to fly down and get Mil examined in a facility. Although I think it's an excellent idea, I will not be getting involved. I no longer want to interact with her because of her insane behavior. Second update. A restraining order has been issued against Mil. We're exercising caution, but she hasn't tried anything else. Emma consulted with a doctor and a psychologist and had her tested. Physically, everything is good with Mil. Her diagnosis was limited to generalized anxiety disorder. The doctors advised Emma to take her to treatment, stating that there was no underlying medical cause for her behavior. Since then, Emma has not gotten in touch. She stated that she was ready to assist if something went wrong, but she can no longer put up with MIL's hatred. I completely understand and agree with that. If she had a mental illness, I might have sympathized with her and supported her, but now that it has been ruled out, we can be certain that this is who she is. With such, there is no reconciliation. We received the restraining order for this reason. Her safety is the top priority for Rick, May, and myself, and Mill has shown herself to be unsafe twice. Furthermore, she harbors animosity for May in particular, so we need to be even more cautious that they avoid each other. I hope I never have anything else to say about this entire experience, and I believe this will be my final update. The family has been through a lot, and I'm simply thankful that we're all safe. My parents gave me some money and kicked me out after my sister was born. 17 years later, they want my help. I am 35 years old and employed as a software developer at a large West Coast tech company. I finally established a secure existence for myself after working in the field for almost 10 years, complete with a respectable salary, a cozy apartment, and even some future investments. I undoubtedly appear to be living the American dream from the outside. However, something that happened recently has been making me face my history, and I'm finding it difficult to deal with. After 17 years of total quiet, my parents, 60 million and 58 million, reached out to me and asked for my assistance with my sister, 13 million. You must be aware of our past in order to comprehend the significance of this. My parents never wanted me as a youngster. Before I was born, they had been trying for a daughter for years, and they were openly disappointed to have me instead. As a child, I frequently heard parents call me the spare, or a remnant in conversations with friends or family. We weren't impoverished because my dad was a real estate agent and my mom taught high school, but they always pretended that my presence was depleting their finances. I can still clearly recall family get-togethers where family members would try to persuade my parents to be thankful for their healthy son. I learned to keep quiet during these conversations, but my parents would still say things like, "Unless it's a girl, we don't really have a child yet." My aunt would say things like, "At least he's smart and well-behaved," or, "Many couples can't have children at all." Their remarks still had a profound impact, especially during family gatherings or holidays. I began to develop a strong interest in computers and programming in middle school. Using whatever resources I could find online, I would spend hours training myself to code in the school computer lab. After noticing my enthusiasm, my computer science teacher began to mentor me and even allowed me to stay after school to work on projects. However, my parents would either nod absently or shift the conversation to their ongoing efforts to have another child whenever I tried to discuss my accomplishments with them. When I was 15, everything changed. My sister was my parents' miracle child, finally born after years of trying. It was like a switch flipping in our home when she was born. There was love, excitement, and celebration all at once, but none of it was aimed at me. They gave her everything, including their time, money, love, and attention. Although I recognized that she was their top priority, the disparity in their treatment of us was unpleasant and striking. I can still clearly recall my junior year victory in a state-level programming competition. A minor college scholarship was part of the award. My parents were so enamored with my sister's block stacking that they hardly looked up when I brought the trophy and certificate home. However, her accomplishment of stacking 3 blocks on top of one another was worthy of a cake and photo celebration with the family. I pushed myself into my academics and coding at school because I knew that education was the key to my freedom. I began working as a freelance web developer on the side, keeping the money I made hidden because I thought I might need it in the future. That intuition was correct. In retrospect, I believe my parents had been preparing this for some time since, rather than throwing a party for my 18th birthday, they sat me down for what they called an important discussion. They clarified that my sister's playroom and learning area required my room. They had already made the decision that I would go right away. They completely shut me down when I attempted to explain that I needed time to find a place and save money. They said I'd had time to get ready and should be able to handle things myself. My father gave me a $500 envelope containing what he referred to as startup money, and gave me until the weekend to depart. It happened on a Tuesday. I stuffed my laptop, some clothes, and the about $3,000 I had surreptitiously collected from my freelancing business into my old high school backpack and a few trash bags. As I packed, my sister, who was only 3 years old at the time, watched from the doorway, unable to comprehend what was going on. The initial years were harsh. While being cautious not to overstay my welcome anywhere, I couch surfed between friends' homes. I worked a variety of jobs, including day labor at construction sites, nighttime shifts at 7-Eleven, and freelance coding whenever I could find customers. In between employment, I would spend the day sleeping at public libraries, utilizing their computers to learn new programming languages and search for better prospects. I survived on whatever was on offer at the dollar store and ramen noodles. I sometimes went to bed hungry because I wasn't sure if I would have enough money for my next meal. The worst time of year was in the winter, when I occasionally had to decide between having enough food to eat and paying for a warm place to sleep. I made an effort to stay in touch with my parents during those formative years in spite of everything. I would periodically give them a call in the hopes of seeing even the slightest indication that they were concerned about my welfare. However, they were obviously waiting for the conversation to end, and each exchange was brief and awkward. They never inquired about my needs or how I was doing. They just remarked, "That's nice," and shifted the conversation to my sister's preschool accomplishments when I told that I was enrolled in community college courses while working. I quit trying after being the only one who reached out for 2 years. Even after I taught myself full-stack coding, they never gave me a call to see how I was doing or left a message on my birthday or on holidays. I recall being so desperate to let them know that I had arrived, but their phone had already been cut off. I learned so much about survival and independence in those first several years after being expelled. I continued to code while working several jobs. I would use my phone to study programming documentation during my breaks at the convenience shop. I would work on minor freelance assignments at the public library in between building site shifts. With free Wi-Fi, air conditioning, and, most importantly, computers where I could practice coding, the library turned into my haven. When a small firm decided to hire me as a junior developer, I finally got my break. My freelance work portfolio and my contributions to open source projects impressed them. Although the pay wasn't high by IT standards, it changed my life. I was able to buy a little studio apartment for the first time and was no longer concerned about where I would sleep every night. I pushed myself into the task, working 70-hour weeks and learning as much as I could about cloud computing, database administration, and system architecture. Like a sponge, I took it all in. After my coworkers saw how committed I was, I quickly took charge of modest initiatives. I kept working on open source projects and creating my own apps on the weekends and at night. I had discovered something I genuinely liked doing, so it wasn't just about the money anymore. When one of the big IT corporations saw my contributions to their open source platform, it was the true turning point. They extended an invitation for an interview, and following 6 rounds of technical interviews, I was offered a job that fundamentally altered my life. After 7 years, I am now in charge of a large project team as a senior software engineer. I have enough cash to feel secure about the future, a modern apartment in a safe building, and a solid investment portfolio. Before my father's number showed up on my phone 3 days ago, after 17 years of total silence, I believed I had finally put an end to my past. It was startling to hear his voice. His voice seemed older, almost frantic. "It couldn't wait," he added. They had to discuss my sister. I was left reeling by the discourse that ensued. "It looks like my 13-year-old sister is having a lot of problems. She frequently skips school, has been caught shoplifting several times, and hangs out with a group of older teens whom my parents disapprove of. More concerningly, she has had multiple encounters with local police authorities and drugs have been discovered in her room twice. 3 different rehabilitation programs have already been tried on her, but none of them appear to have been successful." When my father mentioned their financial predicament, it became evident why they had called. More than $200,000 has been spent on counseling sessions, various treatment programs, and legal bills. They had sold the majority of their valuables, maxed out many credit cards, and remortgaged their home. They are in dire need of assistance and are now considering a $75,000 specialist long-term treatment center. With tears in her eyes, my mother called and said they had nowhere else to go. The phrase, "family needs to stick together," and the fact that I am their only chance to save my sister were repeated by her. I was struck by the irony of hearing these remarks from the same folks who expelled me when I was 18 and never looked back. When I was sleeping in my car in between couch surfing arrangements, where was this sense of family unity? On all those evenings when I went to bed hungry, where was it? In addition to aid with their credit card debt and mortgage payments, they are requesting support with the costs of the treatment program. They require over $100,000 in total. If I couldn't give the entire money right away, my father even recommended that we arrange a payment schedule. To be honest, if I wanted to, I could assist them. I have a secure financial situation thanks to years of frugal living and wise investing. However, I feel physically uncomfortable at the idea of granting them access to my finances. I acquired this money by working hard and making sacrifices for years, frequently going without food and housing while learning to code. I can't sleep at night because of how complicated this scenario is. Since my sister is only a child, I feel bad for even considering helping. She never requested to be born into this mess, and perhaps things would have turned out differently if someone had supported me when I was a teenager. However, I then recall how my parents handled me, how they dismissed me without question and never once inquired about my whereabouts for 17 years. They contacted again yesterday, requesting a face-to-face meeting. They claimed to want to make amends and provide an explanation for everything. They offered to drive the 4 hours to visit me and proposed that we meet at a fancy restaurant in my neighborhood. Their zeal unnerves me in some way, as if they're making an excessive effort to sway events to their advantage. According to my partner, 34F, I should set clear limits. She has personally witnessed the amount of effort I have put into rebuilding my life and getting over my childhood trauma. She fears that allowing my parents to return could reverse years of emotional growth. Although he thinks I owe my parents nothing, my best buddy, who let me sleep on his sofa during those difficult early years, advises me to think about assisting my sister directly if I so choose. I'm totally conflicted right now. My rational side tells me to keep the distance that has helped me succeed. My parents still view me as a resource to be utilized rather than a beloved son, thus they haven't changed. Their true motivations are evident from the way they are handling this matter, concentrating on the money rather than trying to make atonement for the past. However, my emotional side keeps thinking about my sister, a disturbed adolescent who may be misbehaving due to the same poisonous familial dynamics from which I fled. By refusing to assist, am I sustaining the abandoning cycle, or would aiding merely make my parents' manipulation possible? Those terrifying evenings spent sleeping in my car taught me to never take for granted the life I've worked so hard to create. I feel like I'm being pulled back into the craziness that I've been trying to avoid for years. Should I assist them and run the danger of being manipulated again? Do I make an effort to assist my sister directly? Or should I continue to set the boundaries that have helped me recover and grow? I'm sure I'll question any decision I choose. I might be angry with them for dragging me back in if I assist. I could always question whether I could have changed my sister's life if I didn't. This decision is weighing me down, and I could really use some outside insight. First update. I chose to meet my folks at a downtown coffee shop after reading your advice and comments. I reasoned that being in a public setting would help maintain decorum and provide me with a convenient way to leave if necessary. I was immediately struck by how much they had aged when I first saw them enter. In addition to having black circles under their eyes and a lot more gray hair than I could recall, they were worn out. They didn't take long to delve into specifics. It seems that my sister's problems are more serious than they first said over the phone. She has had to attend several rehabilitation programs, all of which they have had to pay for out of pocket, in addition to her substance abuse and legal issues. She hasn't gone to a full week of classes in months, so she's not just missing school periodically. She frequently slips out with individuals who are obviously a bad influence, frequently going missing for days at a time. My parents weren't lying to me about their financial circumstances. They showed me their phone records. To pay for these costs, they have sold the majority of their prized assets, including the house I grew up in. They are currently having financial difficulties and live in a tiny apartment. According to their estimates, they will only be able to survive for a few more months if they sell some family artifacts. I felt uneasy because of this underlying expectation that pervaded our talk. My duty as their son, to assist them, was one of the family obligations they constantly bringing up. They seem to assume that just because we are related, I would step up regardless of what they had done in the past. It was evident from the way they spoke that they hadn't really acknowledged their previous treatment or truly digested how they had wronged me. I could feel all of my previous hatred and rage rising as they continued. None of this was their fault, in their opinion. They dismissed my expulsion at the age of 18, claiming it was just parenting, and that they had acted in the best interests of the family, at the time. They behaved as though their treatment of me was entirely appropriate. They now expected me to overlook everything and intervene to solve their issues. I came to see that they were seeking a solution, not understanding or forgiveness. And my money was that solution to them. I was their final option because they needed someone to shoulder the financial load of all the choices they had made over the years. I listened to what they had to say before firmly telling them that I was unable to assist them. I clarified that when they abandoned me, I had put a lot of effort into starting a life on my own and that I was no longer in a position to help them, either morally or emotionally. I was clear that I didn't feel obligated to get them out of a situation that they had established for themselves. My refusal was not well received by them at all. Their tone altered entirely, and their expressions hardened. They accused me of being callous for not assisting my sister, branded me selfish, and claimed that I was leaving my family. Their eyes were filled with disappointment and rage, which I could see. It reminded me of my early years. Nothing had changed. They continued attempting to use guilt to make me feel as though I owed them money. I was more conflicted as I left that meeting than when I arrived. I feel somewhat relieved that I defended myself and established boundaries. However, another part of me feels bad, as if I'm abandoning them when they're at their lowest. It's difficult to describe, but it seems weird to leave them in this way even if I know they profoundly wounded me. I can't stop thinking about my sister, whom I don't even know, and their predicament. Although I'm sorry for her, I don't think I can help her. It hurts to know that even after all these years, my parents still only regard me as a tool to solve their problems rather than as a unique person with a life and challenges of my own. It's difficult for me to let go of the guilt. Is it wrong of me to persist with my choice? Should I have looked for a compromise? I can't stop reliving the encounter in my head, questioning whether I made the proper decision. Second update. Since my last post, which was only a week ago, things have gotten even more bizarre. Only a few hours earlier, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I heard my sister's voice for the first time when I responded. I was completely unprepared for this. I only have hazy memories of her from when she was a newborn, just before I moved out. The call got off to an unexpectedly good start. Considering what I had heard about her behavior, I was surprised to hear a courteous, almost pleasant voice. She started by requesting that I assist our parents with their present financial predicament. It was evident that she had practiced this pitch because she was making a big deal out of how they were having trouble and how I could save the family. I made an effort to respond politely but firmly, stating that I had to make the best choices for myself because of the complexity of my connection with our parents. Everything changed at that point. Her attitude changed abruptly. In a matter of seconds, she switched from being courteous to becoming enraged, accusing me of being self-centered and leaving her to handle our parents' problems. She had always been envious of her and insisted that I was abandoning my family. She said I was being arrogant since I had left and begun living on my own, whereas they had been my backers the entire time. I was stunned by what she said. They had a hauntingly familiar sound, as if she were repeating something she had heard countless times. She talked about my assistance with such arrogance, as though she really thought I had a duty to intervene and make everything right. I was so shocked that I was unable to react. I was being forced to make up for years of decisions I had nothing to do with by this person I had never dated. She hung up before I had a chance to comprehend her emotional outburst. I tried to make sense of everything as I sat there looking at my phone. What was the source of this animosity? Why did she believe I had left her? I required clarification. I was determined to find out what was happening, so I called my folks. I immediately questioned them whether they had been telling my sister that I had left them and her behind when they first picked up the phone. After a revealing silence, they eventually came clean. They had been giving my sister an entirely distorted explanation for my departure for years. They informed her that they had severed their relationship with her out of spite and that I couldn't bear to share their attention with a younger sibling. I was portrayed as a conceited older brother who left the family because I was envious of her. They had completely removed from their story the fact that they had made me feel alienated from the day she was born and expelled me as soon as I became 18. It was as if someone had taken my breath away. My sister has grown up thinking that I was the bad guy in this tale. Given that she had been fed misinformation about who I was and why I left, it's no wonder she felt as though I had abandoned her. She had been carefully kept in the dark about the fact that my parents had made me feel unwelcome from birth and had evicted me from the house. That realization caused me to hang up on them. Although it has just been a few hours since our previous talk, they haven't made another attempt to get in touch. I'm upset with my parents for misrepresenting me to my sister and giving her the impression that I abandoned her, but I'm also upset with my sister for snapping at me and demanding my assistance as though I owed it to her. It's difficult to get rid of this resentment, but I'm also experiencing a new form of guilt. I wish my parents had been honest with her about my reasons for leaving. Perhaps my relationship with my sister would have been different if they had. Although I might not have been able to provide financial support to my parents, I could have developed a relationship with my sister and perhaps helped her steer clear of some of these behavioral problems. Now, though, it seems impossible to repair the harm. Even whether I want to try is up in the air. My family returned in the worst conceivable way, just when I thought I was done with them forever, which makes the whole scenario tiring. It's not that easy for me, even if a lot of commenters have advised me to simply ban my parents and move on. Whatever you want to call me, this is still family, and I believe that I should at least be aware of what's happening. Even though I'm in no position to provide financial support for my family, I can't help but notice that this is the first time they've contacted me. Nevertheless, I can see that my sister is too engrossed in their version of events to see things any other way, and my parents are still attempting to control the situation to achieve their goals. I'm at a loss on what to do. I can't get rid of the sense that any decision I make will be the wrong one. I'm even more convinced that keeping my distance is the proper decision after the way they've misrepresented the reasons for my departure. I feel bad for my sister though. Her conduct and relationships are obviously being impacted by the skewed perspective of her family history that she was raised with. I wonder if this damage can be fixed or if it's best to leave it alone. Third update. Since my last update, which was a few months ago, I've had plenty of time to think things through and let things calm down. It's been quieter for me, to be honest, but only because I choose to avoid the mess my sister and parents had produced. I'm coming to realize that sometimes taking a step back and avoiding letting their drama take over my life is the greatest way to achieve serenity. My parents gave me another call about a month after I had last provided an update. I wanted to hear what they had to say, so even though I was dreading it, I picked up. They were even more desperate this time, and they accused me of being dishonest in order to get money from me. They described the dreadful situation, how they were in danger of losing everything, and how they wanted me to intervene and make things right. The guilt trip about family is supposed to stick together was their first attempt. When that failed, they resorted to threats, claiming that if I didn't assist them, they would ruin my life. They then claimed that I was their only hope, changing their strategy once more. To be honest, I felt disgusted. They continued to threaten me in spite of everything that had transpired, and they never once stopped to admit how poorly they had treated me. I refused to back down and reiterated that I was unable to provide them with financial support and that I was not responsible for solving their issues. I reminded them that I wasn't responsible for cleaning up the mess. They had made these decisions. Of course, that did not make them pleased. For the next month, they continued to phone, alternating between threats and guilt trips. They eventually stopped phoning. I assumed they had finally come to the conclusion that I would not give in. I didn't hear back from them for a month, and to be honest, I thought that might be it. However, I received another call around a week ago. I nearly didn't answer, but my curiosity won out. Things had only deteriorated. They informed me that they needed to file for bankruptcy. They were essentially starting over with nothing after selling nearly all they owned to pay off their debts. They then revealed even more shocking detail. My sister had moved in with one of her friends and had severed all ties with them. Even though she is just 13, she managed to move in with a friend's family, who my parents claim tolerates her misbehavior. They said it was best that my sister left them because they could no longer see themselves supporting her when I questioned why they didn't call the police. In a sense, they have also abandoned their second child. They initially attempted to place the blame on me. They claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had simply assisted them when they requested it. They said that everything went south because of me. Naturally, they were unable to acknowledge their own responsibility for their acts. I was furious. I bluntly told them that their actions and how they had treated me were to blame for everything that was happening to them. I brought up the topics of how they treated me like a second-class person in my own house, how they neglected me when I needed them, and how they expelled me when I reached 18. I informed them that they continued to try to place the responsibility on me while ignoring the fact that that had an impact on me. At that point, they began to retreat and eventually ceased making excuses. They expressed regret for everything they had done to me and offered an apology. They expressed to me their wish that they had acted differently. They seemed to be saying everything that needed to be said, but it was too late. In addition to the fact that they had ruined my sister's and my own lives, I couldn't simply ignore how they had treated me for years. They were now suffering the repercussions of their decision to push me away. I must admit that I felt sorry for them, but I also realized that I couldn't risk the life I had created for myself in an attempt to mend what was already damaged. I informed them that I needed to keep my distance and that I was unable to assist. Despite their displeasure, I stood by my choice. I was still upset with them for what they had done to me after I hung up. However, I felt sorry for them at the same time. It's too late now, but I wish they had taken the time to realize what they were doing incorrectly when they had the chance. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't save them, and I'm learning to accept that. I have no idea what the future holds for my sister or them. I just know that I won't let their errors disturb my tranquility. They can't drag me back into their mess. I've come too far. I have much more important things to worry about right now, but maybe in the future I'll try to get in touch with my sister once more to see if I can assist her get back on track. All I can do is hope she takes this lesson to heart and makes wiser decisions than our parents did. That's about it for me, then. I won't be checking in on my family for a very long time. Even though I'm aware that this isn't the best conclusion, I've come to terms with it. I sincerely appreciate all of your guidance and encouragement over this trip. It has enabled me to remain steadfast in my choices.